Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Raymond James just texted me, said he's waiting to be let in. Not sure where he's at, but I don't see anybody.
It's open. I'm not seeing a waiting room.
I don't see him.
You know, Mike, I was reading Joe Maloney's email. Remember I told you that Wendell Frazier was one of the initial instigators of the building the theater or setting up the theater festival. And then, you know, Tony and Barbara were key people. When we do our history wall in the lobby, I think that's kind of a good idea to recognize some of the people that over the years have contributed.
Time to the theater. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a good thought he had there.
I think it's great. Yeah, we can put something together, I'm sure. We're gonna have all kinds of walls with all kinds of stuff on it.
Well, I think the history wall in the lobby would be a good place to consolidate a lot of stuff and give people something to look at while they're waiting.
Right. Did you
that was a mixed message, obviously. Had a lot of different issues embedded in it.
Yeah. Well, that was an interesting tidbit, I thought.
Hey, Ian, did you find Raymond James there?
Not in there. He's not showing up. So I would just have him reload it,
Maybe reload. Yeah, I'll have to tell him.
It sort of makes me wonder why he didn't put his name in the hat to be elected to the board.
Exactly.
I mean, you got a lot of people out there that are bitching about everything, but nobody's willing to step up. I mean, that was sort of disappointing. I mean, it's good that it saved us the money and everything, but
right,
sort of speaks volumes in my opinion.
Mike, you're muted.
All right, there he is. I saw him. Where'd he go?
Now
he's coming.
There he is.
There he is. Okay.
All right. Okay, well, welcome everyone to tonight's Fair Oaks Recreation and Park District Board of Directors meeting. Tonight is our 1,386 Board of Directors regular meeting. So thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I just would like to let everyone know, if you have not joined us before, that if there is an agenda item that you'd like to speak on, or if you would like to do a public comment that is on a non-agenda item, to please, the best way to let us know is to click on the chat box and say that you would like to speak either during the non-agenda item public comment time, or if there is an agenda item, which agenda item you would like to speak. That way everyone, we get to hear from everyone. So we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So Jennifer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. If we could please do the roll call.
Carhart.
Excuse me?
Are you present, Director Carhart?
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear what you said. Yes,
Sorry.
I'm present.
Director Irwin?
Here.
Director O'Farrell?
Here.
Director Mounts?
Here.
Director Tamani?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Okay, so for our item tonight for presentations, proclamations, and recognitions, you'll see on the agenda we don't have something listed. However, this afternoon it was brought to my attention that we have the Fair Oaks Youth Advisory Board President for the 2020-2021 term here with us tonight. And so we'd like to, or I would like to have her give us a short presentation on what the FOIAB group is gonna, what their plans are for the upcoming months. So Rachel Lee.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Lee. I'm the new chair for the Fair Oaks Youth Advisory Board. Nice to meet everyone. So like pre-term for FOIAB back in August, we were asked by the AMS Planning and Research to give feedback on ways we can incorporate more culture and arts into Fair Oaks. And there we were able to discuss things like having a bigger platform for local artists to display their art, as well as diversifying and extending the different genres of art, whether that be like sculptures to murals to chalk events, even sensory walks, and even different genres of music for concerts in the park. That way we can bring more insights to individuals in the community. And then a couple weeks ago, we had our first official meeting, and obviously given COVID, we have to work our way around things and adjust some things. So for brainstorming different ideas of ways FOIAB can provide service, we planned a holiday canned food drive, which the dates are to be announced. And we've had other ideas like a drive-by coat donations and caroling during the holiday to writing letters to nursing homes. These are kind of like some ideas that we have for the upcoming year at least. And this Saturday, FOIAB will be participating in the Wicked Ghoul event. We have a couple of commissioners working at the FOIAB booth, and they will be passing out candy. Any questions?
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds great, great ideas.
Has it really been a year since our last gentleman, our last president? It seems like it doesn't seem that long ago. My God.
2020, it seems like 20 years.
Is he, I mean, was he just termed, was his 1 year termed off? What's he doing? Do we have any, we didn't get a goodbye from him.
Yeah, it kind of ended like pretty abrupt.
Well, welcome and thank you, Rachel. We're looking forward to seeing you every month.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you. Okay, so we are going to move to the next item, which this is audience or public comment on non-agenda items. If there's anyone that would like to speak to an item that is not listed on the agenda, please let us know by either putting a message in the chat, or if you are on the phone. Ian, I don't recall the instructions for someone. Oh, I see someone in the chat right now. Emiliano.
Emiliano. There you go.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Emiliano, if you could please state your full name and if you're a Fair Oaks resident, your address, please. Oops. There we go.
I think his mic's on.
Oh, and the microphone, and she said is asking for microphone and video. I believe that the video has to be activated on the user end. Is that correct?
Give us 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, you're good to start your video now.
Okay.
Sorry. So it doesn't look like we're getting any video from you.
Looks like he dropped off the attendees list.
Oh no. Oh.
No?
He's typing. Just said thanks.
Is he the owner of the new running store?
Allá vamos.
Oh, there he is.
There we go.
Now it's frozen.
Mm-hmm.
The wonders of Zoom.
Aaron looks like he has a setup like yours.
Yeah, similar.
Getting a little bit of delay. Maybe there's an internet issue.
Okay.
We could definitely come back.
Okay, let's do that. If there, once Emiliano is able to get his once we get that situation figured out, we definitely want to hear from him. So if there's anybody else, please send us a message in the chat. I don't see any. Oh wait, no. Okay, I don't see anyone. And so I'm going to move to the next item, which is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so our next item is the consent calendar. Are there any questions or comments relating to the consent calendar?
Yeah, I had a question on the minutes of the September 15th meeting. The record for the naming of Jim Strang Park indicates that John O'Farrell made the motion and seconded the motion. I'm hoping that I was the one that made the motion.
I think you did, Ralph.
Yeah, so could that be corrected? Let's see. I don't recall which item it was, but it was the one on
It should have been
naming.
Carhart because it was made by Director O'Farrell and then seconded also by Director O'Farrell. So that can't be right.
Wrong.
So let me fix it.
The other thing on that was Roberta McGlatchen's name was misspelled.
Oh.
Also, it should say former Sac County Board Supervisor. And then my other question was, I noticed in the recap of the minutes of this month, it seemed very different than previous months as far as it seemed like we had the discussion and the public comments and little blurbs written. I don't believe overall that's been our protocol before. So I was hoping that I could get clarification if it has been or if it hasn't been, and then I'll move to my next question based on what the answer is.
We have not done that before. The reason I did that this time was because we had a lot of public comment. And normally in our regular meetings, I get hard copies of people's public comment forms, which I don't have with a virtual meeting. So I wanted to memorialize it somehow, that we'd received both the ones that were read into the record, as well as the public comments on the artwork in Plaza Park. So I couldn't think of a better way to sort of get that information into the record other than the recording.
I feel like that could, I mean, from my recollection, how the city of Sacramento does it is they will link and then attach all the documents. I feel like we have to make a decision on how we do it. And I think opening up this way could just open things oddly. And I would prefer us not to do that. I don't know if anybody else has any clarification, considering we haven't done that before.
We just don't have any documents to link is the issue with this, because it's a virtual meeting. There's no document. For the ones that are read into the record, yes, we can absolutely do that. But for the public comments that came in during the meeting, all we have is the recording.
Okay, but all of the ones that were referred to from my recollection were letters or emails though. So we would have a written thing.
For that one, I will make that change.
Okay, and the other thing, but like even Darren on a different item, he commented, several people have commented, or Mr. McDermott, several people have commented on other things before, and we haven't written those comments into our record like that. So
right,
that's a shift. And the other thing that I felt a little odd with was that we did have written in, all of those specific people that show their support for Jim Strang Park. But when it came to Katie Ross's readings of from I forget her name, but she read a lot of things. We just said we just verbaled over that, and I don't know. Again, I felt it was weird because it seemed like everybody was saying that they were in favor, whereas again, in what was read from Amy, but what was read from her comments was, again, most people were showing support for Swallowway. So it just felt a little not quite accurately represented. So I just wanted to make sure that we were doing that. And again, not setting a precedence for how we're going to be doing our minutes going forward. Because I also think with adding all those comments, it opens us up to more, I don't know, just more challenges, more issues. So I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Okay, I'm perfectly happy to take all of that out. I agree that less is better sometimes.
Yeah, maybe you can memorialize that in some other document that goes into the record. Because Raymond James is correct. In my 18 years, this is the first time we've done that. I was surprised when I first came on the board because our CPAC meetings, in the years I was secretary, they'd go to about 15 or 20 pages with everybody's comments. And the board of supervisors loved that, but it was a hell of a job to try to record things accurately.
I'll tell you what, they don't love that anymore, Ralph. That's
I think it's a good idea to add. I mean, if you could add those items as attachments, obviously, because I do think it's really important to have it on record, just because, like you said, these are virtual meetings, and typically we'd have someone who would speak. They would fill out the form, and then we would have that sort of information. So I do think that is important, but I don't see a problem with, like Raymond James said, removing it from the actual
minutes
discussion item. Yeah. I definitely want to have a record of it too.
Jennifer, are we keeping a recording of our Zoom meetings?
Yes, we are.
We are?
Oh, there we go.
Good.
And we do keep, we used to have audio recordings of our board meetings. Are those disposed of after a time?
Yes, they are.
I thought they were all at your house, Ralph.
They could be.
They're bound in the books.
Right behind me there.
Ralph has board minutes going back to 1898.
The first Chicagoans.
Right.
Pleasure reading.
Okay, well, that's good. I also had another just quick question on auto maintenance. I noticed that for expenditures that was quite high. We're already at 70% plus consumed. 20220500. Somebody could speak to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Sean to speak to that. Thank you. I think Sean's on.
Hello, Board of Directors. Sean Ventura, Park and Facilities Manager. As to your question, Raymond James, yes, that is very high, and 70% is too much this early. That was due to an unfortunate incident with one of the vehicles and one of the park's employees. No one was injured. It was just a little bit of damage to the vehicle, but the repair cost was high. That should fall off when the insurance claim comes back and takes that back off. It was just the repair bill. Appropriate actions have been taken with the employee, and I'm hoping that never happens again. But with the amount of time that those cars are in use on a long enough timeline, the rating of incidents is going to be at least greater than 0.
Okay. That's like, there we go. So as far as whatever's happened or being done, Mike, is Sean or something being done to make sure we can try to not have that type of incident happen again?
Yes. I don't know if I'm appropriate in discussing it in an open forum as far as actions with employees. I'm not really, Jen has shaken her head. But yes, we have taken many steps to avoid that in the future.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions regarding the consent calendar?
So much.
Move approval.
All right.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, so we are going to move to our first agenda item. This is a workshop with AMS on the strategic plan for the Village Plaza Park renovation.
Sabrina, are you going to introduce this? I think Sabrina's here. we go.
Hello, do you guys hear me and
Hi,
see me?
Sabrina.
Hello.
Hello. Moderator Ian, do we have both Bill and Jonathan on with us?
They're here.
Awesome. All right. For the public, my name is Sabrina Bernardo. I'm the recreation supervisor with Fair Oaks Rec and Park District. And just a little bit of background, at the May 20th Board of Directors meeting, the board approved a service agreement with AMS Planning and Research. They're to provide a business and operational plan for Measure J projects for Plaza Park, Village Park, Arts and Crafts Building, Community Clubhouse, and the Veterans Memorial Amphitheater, all of which we are kind of referring to as the art complex. The business and operational plan will establish a financial and programming analysis that will guide the future of the art complex. And kind of with that, the Fair Oaks Board of Directors has been identified along with many other key stakeholders. And we're hoping that you all would provide us some insight into market conditions, potential partnerships, project funding, and program opportunities that you guys may be aware of. Everybody kind of comes with their own background and ideas. And so the idea behind all of this is to kind of just outreach to as many stakeholders such as the theater, FOVEC, Chamber of Commerce. What are all of the ideas and just discussions that we can have to get the best operational plan that we just definitely can for this art complex. So with that, we have Bill and Blake with us, Bill Blake and Jonathan Spangler with us from AMS. And I'm gonna turn it over to them so that they can begin that discussion with you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Sabrina. And our thanks to you all and Sabrina and Mike especially for working with us and helping us get through the process. It's very collaborative. I'm going to share my screen. We have a few slides to kind of walk through here. Let me do this and just push a couple magic buttons. So let me just bear with me for a second. There we go. Excellent. So as Sabrina said, we are working with the district on a plan for, we can call it business and operations, we can call it programming, or whatever it would be, but it's really about the activity of the district and particularly the Village Park, with a particular focus on arts and cultural events and things, which is a pretty broad tent in terms of activity. What we're going to do with you tonight over the next half hour, 45 minutes or so, is get you familiar with us, with our scope of work briefly, and then ask you a bunch of questions and hope that you all can feel free to respond to those questions with your thoughts and ideas. And I'll kind of tell you where we are in our scope of work, but we really do want to hear from you tonight and try to get you talking a little bit. So you'll have to indulge us trying to pick your brains a bit on what your thoughts are for this, the operations of the park. We will be back to you next month with some results of our first phase of work. And we look forward to that. So first, a bit about us. Jonathan and I are with a national consulting firm called AMS Planning and Research. As you know from approving our contract and looking at our qualifications, AMS is a management consulting and planning firm really focused in the area of arts, culture, and entertainment, with a really big commitment to communities. Really the end goal of a lot of arts, culture, and entertainment endeavors is the idea that of community building, and that these are things that help create a sense of place, a sense of community, and a place of belonging for people. Important for us. My background is in theater. coming up through theater, acting, directing, studying at running performing arts centers, performing arts programs, teaching a bit, and consulting. I consulted with AMS actually in the early 2000s before moving with my family to Sacramento. I took a break from consulting to run the B Street Theater here for 11 years, or nearly 11 years, through all of the trials and tribulations of getting the Sofia Tsakopoulos Center for the Arts funded, designed, and built. And now I'm back to consulting. That's a bit about me. Jonathan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces that I've seen in multiple rounds of interviews, so good to see everyone again. My background's also in several different performing arts genres. I grew up as a musician and an actor, and then went to college for music education, ended up teaching high school and middle school band for a couple years, then went on to serve in the U.S. Army Band in Germany, and then went into management consulting after going to Carnegie Mellon for a couple of years, and then working with Pittsburgh Symphony. So that brings me out here to California, where I'm working with AMS Planning and Research and helping you all activate your district.
Awesome. And of course, we're part of a firm, so we actively engage with our colleagues at AMS about this project and others. But and as you'll see, one of our upcoming tasks is to look at case studies and things that might sort of kind of have some learning to, and we certainly share our colleagues in that and knowledge pools. So what are we doing? We're approaching this work with some key questions as we come into it. And really our approach is to try to understand the marketplace in terms of utilization, consumers, and users. So what kind of activities would go on? Who would be the beneficiaries and participants of those activities? Users could also be called content providers or partners. Who might those be with the district, and what sort of activities might the district need to provide itself, be the content provider of itself? And really all of that gets at and tries to inform and a back and forth discussion with what are the goals? What are we really trying to accomplish? And we will have some discussion about that in a few minutes. So our scope to explore all of that, our scope of work is really to, in the first piece, and the check marks means these are things that we've done, either 100% or 80% done at this point, as we're kind of coming down the home stretch for phase one. We've reviewed a number of background documents that I think Sabrina had the privilege of loading up into a Dropbox for us to plow through, but trying to get up to speed on the planning work that has gone on, what your plans are for the massive renovation that's happening for the park. We are working with a small steering committee, and we had a kind of a kickoff workshop and made that group answer questions for us. And we've also been conducting a number of one-on-one and small group interviews with key stakeholders around Fair Oaks and in the arts community in particular, educators, business leaders, artists, arts providers, organizations, people like the Chamber of Commerce and the Fair Oaks Theater Festival, and a lot. Mike and Sabrina have provided us with a really terrific list of people to get through, but also county leaders, people from the Metropolitan Arts Commission that would also have some interest in what happens in Fair Oaks. We have also taken a look at the supply of existing venues in the market area. Rancho Cordova, Fair Oaks, Folsom in particular, Arden a little bit, Arden Arcade, about assembly, meeting, and arts and cultural venues in that area to understand what is around in the market area. And we are in the midst right now of circulating a survey to prospective users of your facilities. Some of them are current users of your facilities. Some of them are people that might have an interest in using facilities. And we are circulating that survey. We're actually going to hold it open another few days, another week or so, to try to boost up the response rate. But we're circulating that now to get that data. When we come back to you, we will have analyzed that information. We will have done some work on case studies about arts districts and multidisciplinary arts programs. And we'll come back and workshop that with the steering committee, and then bring back a summarized version of that basically to this board at the midpoint, and sort of test out some directional ideas with you and inform those with some case studies. That's phase one, gathering the data. Then in the second phase of work is really about thinking about what did all that data tell us in terms of the activity that's going to take place and who's going to do it. We call that an activity profile. So we really like to start building our pro formas with activity assumptions first. That will lead us to probably a few different ways to structure that activity in terms of management and operations. This will be a discussion and some scenario exploration about who might your partners be, both for funding and activity and content providing, how those are structured within the overall structure of the district and the other players that are around. We look forward to that conversation. Once we have those things really start to build our assumptions for basically an operating forecast. We will take a look at a management plan and a pro forma operating model. Basically what we do is we like to consider a normalized year of operations for the new facility and build from there. So as you know, grand openings and ups and downs of the shakedown crews for a newly reopened facility of any kind can have some ups and downs, but we like to look for where's this actually going to settle, and start to build that forecast from there so that you and staff know really what you're getting into in the forecast and options. And we'll see where it goes from there. We would, of course, come back to the board with a draft final plan towards the end of the second phase, get your input as the clay is still wet but hasn't been in the kiln yet, to get your input once again as a group. That's the flyover of our scope of work. You all may as a board have had a deeper discussion about it upon approving our contract, but I'll just pause here for a second and see if there's any questions about our scope.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
One, and it may be more of a Mike question though too, or whomever can jump in. Who's on the steering committee? Do we have any board members on the steering committee?
Yeah, Member Mounts, I believe, is our.
Great.
Is the board rep on the committee? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Darren, how have those meetings been going? How's everything been going with that?
Well, we had one meeting and it was a couple months back, and it seemed to go fine. I'm at a loss to remember exactly what was discussed. It was a couple months back, and we looked at a lot of things, but everything, looked on par and looked good.
Great. And so there is a lot of talk about the arts, which Phil, bravo on Sophia. I didn't realize that you were part of that. It's phenomenal, and Sacramento's lucky to have that. And Jonathan, cool to hear your background as well. My degree was in opera, so God bless us all.
Oh, wow. Okay. Brave man.
Yeah. Opera singing to champagne slinging. That's what I like to say. Anyway, so a lot of talk on the arts aspect of what can happen and stakeholders and all of that. I heard so much about arts and not so much about other aspects. And I just want to really make sure that when we're talking about the scope and what we're looking at and different types of activities and programming, we're not just looking at visual or performing arts, but other types of programming as well, and other things that might be unique or needed or filling a hole in our community. Is that correct?
So yes, and so you've sort of put your finger on, and I would say there are some boundaries to what our expertise is. I mean, you've hired us. We are arts and culture people. The culture part of that arts discussion goes pretty broadly into things like events and festivals, those kinds of things. And certainly goes into the rental of assembly space, which I think you have some that would be, I'm sure, some portion of this operating plan. And that's what we're really trying to test with this user survey is what is the demand for rental of space, and whether that's a wedding or a Rotary meeting or what have you. That's great. That is certainly within, we consider that part of culture for a community, and it's certainly the ways some of the spaces you have get used, and so that factors into the business plan. What we're not going to be doing is saying you should start a little league organization and tell you how to do that. That's just not what we do, but I don't think you quite have the space for that kind of a thing in the first place. Does that help?
It does, yeah. I just want to make sure that we're looking at it as, you know, not just too honed in on specifically this little area of arts, but that we're definitely taking a more organic, larger approach to all the possibilities, or just other possibilities that we may not be thinking of, and hence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could add in too, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are looking at art classes and stuff as well. That would be for art classes for all ages and subgroups and things like that we have in our community. So, and not just in the village core, but what might be of interest around the community as well.
I agree with Raymond 100%, and that is, I mean, we need to open the box up and look in every direction that's possible to bring in some stuff that we've not been exposed to in Fair Oaks. You know, the theater company they've done a wonderful job, but there's been a limitation on what has been offered. And there have been opportunities to bring in different music venues. And I'm not saying that's the answer, but I mean, go big, go wide. That's what I'm saying.
100%.
That's great. That's great, and thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, and you know, our interviews alone have led us to some of that widening of the aperture a bit. So, for instance, just talking to your Chamber of Commerce leaders about all of the events that they do throughout the year, and trying to understand what those are and how they work. Do they like them? Do they not like them? I understand that's an existing condition and an existing set, but we also like to ask those kinds of informants, what are they aspiring to do more of in the future going forward? So it's great. I was also excited by some of the things that I learned when I was actually out there I think it was 108 degrees the day that Mike, Sabrina, and I tramped around the park to get a feel for what's going on. But you know, the idea of the playground and how active a space that could be, and as that gets improved, pretty awesome. And I'll tell you that my daughter is Rose with Capital Crew out at Lake Natoma. So my wife and I were killing time a couple of weeks ago and went over and got our nut burger, walked over to the park, sat down at a bench and ate while we chased off the roosters, but also just envisioned, you know, really what a special place Fair Oaks is, what the central city, the central village is, and all the potential that's just that you've got there in the village park. It's pretty awesome. It's a great thing to be thinking about. And so, since you've started the thinking, so here's the part where we encourage you to ask more questions, and we're going to ask you some questions to tell us. Darren, in our kickoff meeting with the steering committee, we did spend some time asking you to envision what would success look like if this renovation really produces successful activity and success broadly. 20 years from now, looking back, but what would those impacts be? I mean, John, you're talking about, you know, look broadly and think broadly. To you, what do you think what are the impacts that you're hoping to achieve? And I guess my note here is the design you have, the physical design. I know that's a lot. of effort to get something designed and ultimately to get it built. It will be a very, it's a beautiful design. I think it'll be very functional and very cool looking when it's done. But 20 years from now, people will care less. People's memories will have faded about what it was before the big renovation of 2021, and it'll be all about programming.
Well, and I think that's the key, and that's what we did speak a lot about was in Director O'Farrell, the broad scope of the different types of opportunities we can bring in, and obviously this is going to be the centerpiece for the community in a lot of different ways, and we need to make sure that this has the ability to live through 20 years and grow with the community and bring people in from outside the community to experience Fair Oaks. And we're, yes, that's definitely part of the grand scheme of things, is to take into consideration, not only music and theater, but events and weddings and all different opportunities that we can use this space for.
And so if we think forward, and thank you, Darren, for talking about that. You put your finger on one of the things we've heard, not only in some of our interviews, is that one measure of success and impact here would be that people from outside Fair Oaks come regularly to the village to experience an event, a concert, something, but it's outsiders coming in is
Correct.
One of the impacts that we have heard is sought.
Yeah, and also we spoke, obviously we want to make sure that it's a very inviting, welcoming place for people that are residents to come in and enjoy a coffee, go grab an ice cream, listen to some music, enjoy the park with their family. And that's what's really so important that goes into the planning of this space, is it needs to be something for not only the residents, but to draw new people in and experience Fair Oaks in a way that they've never been really drawn to before. And we look at different communities that are adjacent to ours, and a lot of them have these types of spaces that can hold these types of events and venues, and they're very popular. And that's one of the things we want to do, is we want to be one of those types of communities that brings people in, whether it's a Thursday night or a Tuesday night. We have different things going on. I've traveled up to El Dorado Hills, to Folsom, to go to their music's in the park, just like we have a great venue on Thursday nights for our concerts in the park. We just want to take that to the next level and make it a lot more streamlined space, that it's not just the theater, it's not just the concerts in the park, but you have Village Park, you have things going on there, you have maybe sub venues going on at the same time, and there's just a very usable space that is applicable to basically everybody's needs and uses.
That's great.
I wanted to add a few things because this is Director Carhart. The two big draws we have from outside the community, have been the Chicken Festival and the comedy nights. Most everything else has been kind of community generated. It was the community that started the fiesta and started the Chicken Festival, and the band shell was put in as a community effort. So was the theater. And the theater's been run as kind of a local committee together with American River College for many years, but they're waning, they're tired, they're looking for their future also. But other than that, most of this has been aimed at just things in the community or programs that our recreation department puts in. I was thinking, if we're going to expand into many areas, I've been thinking about visual arts, the murals, the sculptures, the art shows, the performing arts, music, both, bands and solo artists, and even opera, dance, all forms of dance in our new Black Box Theater, participatory art, where people come and they do things, maybe out in the parks and stuff, more than just the arts and crafts building. And then, continuation of things like our comedy nights or speakers or something like that, where we could, have, lectures or something going on in the amphitheater. And then combine that with some of the recreation activities we do, our own arts programs, maybe do something with dining or culinary arts with our new kitchens and with the outdoor dining spaces. We've got the rental events. We've got our historical society, which was started back in the 70s by the Park District as a program, but is independent, but certainly is a draw for people in the community that want to promote local history and learn more about their community. I'm just thinking, if we want year-round activities here, some of the things that are important, grants, money that we can pull in from outside the community, publicity. We don't have a lot of publicity here. We have our local American River Messenger, but the Bee doesn't really do much for the suburbs. It doesn't, things that go on here need to be, if we're going to bring people in from the outside, they need to be, advertised in a bigger, a broader media. And then the big thing is, we bring people in, we need to deal with the parking and the transportation. We need to find a place where these people, as they stream in either on transit or cars or bikes or whatever, that they find a place to park their car and come to the event, because that is a major problem. And if we're going to bring in more big events like Chicken Festival and stuff, we have to figure out how to deal with that on an ongoing basis. The last thing I wanted to say is, when you guys are gone, I think it's important that we have some kind of partnership or community committee or an advisory committee that is made up of the appropriate people. I don't know if they're just from the community or whatever, but to advise the board and the district, keep things lively, keep things changing, bring in new ideas other than our own ideas. So I spilled my beans here.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. One follow-up is, you mentioned year round, that activity is happening year round.
Yeah.
And I take it that that's not how the activity calendar looks to you today.
No, we've got so much opportunity to expand what we're doing. Most of the events are handled either by our own staff or they're handled by local groups, the chamber with the fiesta and parades. The Rotary started the Chicken Festival. We took it over. So now it's our event, and it's one of our more successful things as far as drawing people in, helping merchants and so on. And that's another point. Whatever we do here, it needs to be supportive of the business spaces, the landlords and businesses here. I mean, everybody agrees that when we get brew pubs and restaurants and things in here, it livens up. One of the big draws in the past for Fair Oaks Village was the Slocum House. It brought people in from all over the region. And we don't have that class of restaurant anymore. Maybe Shangri-La will build a reputation like that, but it's not just us. If we can work with the chamber or BOVEC or whatever to and landlords, especially the landlords have been somewhat complacent about their spaces, but if we can bring that in, we get the dynamic going. So it's not just us, it's how we interact with the business community and the property owners.
And work collaboratively and interlink.
Yeah, maybe they're part of a committee. Maybe they're part of the advisory committee. What can we do with our events and activities that will help them?
Thank you.
I really like your idea, Ralph, about the advisory committee. I think that's a great idea. And actually something we've kind of talked about in the past at other board meetings about doing something like that. I think that would be, the more people involved, the better. More voices, you get more ideas, right? And so I would support that as well. One addition that I would really like to see is that I would really like to see more programming or events that are inclusive towards like teens or older teens or those in their 20s. It's probably a really hard group. I don't have any teenagers in my house yet, but
you can have mine.
Whether that's like music or movies or
maybe some tattoo artists.
One of the nice things about Fair Oaks and thinking of what draws people in is, like Ralph said, we have the roosters. We have some quirky things that I think we could highlight and improve upon that are already here. For example, the organ in the clubhouse, we've talked about the organ pretty extensively. But I think that if we looked at the organ and we're able to plan more events around the organ involving the organ, I think that would be really great. And just having the ability to have these outdoor, especially music venues, I think that would be a huge draw to older teens or young adults in our community. So, because oftentimes it feels like there's a lot of stuff for maybe the younger crowd and then also the older crowd. And I would love to see too programming just in the parks, whether it's more things like yoga in the park or just reaching out and seeing kind of what options are available. So I'm very pleased to hear that you're talking to all of the stakeholders.
Great.
Yeah, I echo all of the sentiments of my fellow directors. Everything is just so well said. So thank you everybody for what you're saying. I do want to kind of reiterate and extrapolate upon some of it, if that's okay. First, and I'm sure it wasn't meant in any way, but I don't know a lot of the property owners per se, but I can say for sure that Leon Korkos is definitely not complacent, and we're very grateful to so much of what he has done in the village. So I just wanted to make that said. One thing that I think is so unique that, Bill, I can't think it be impressed upon us enough, is the fact that we're in a unique position that we're not just creating or revitalizing a park, but we have the opportunity to revitalize a community. We have the opportunity to be an economic driver for a community. Very few parks get the opportunity to even say that, but we get to be an economic driver. I believe we can be by what we're doing. You know, I'm blessed to have a business that's, you know, next to Golden One on the walkway there. And, you know, we see studies time and time again that when you have these economic driver forces, these big things, like I think our park can be and what we're doing, that it can really change, add, accentuate to what's there. And as Director Carhart said, restaurants, bars, unique things like that helps thrive. And we've been so blessed by the restaurants that have come into Fair Oaks and the bars and the brew pub. I mean, thank you, Gary. I mean, it's been really, really amazing. We have to keep building upon that and not forget the aspect of the economic driver that this can be for the community and the region at large. Another thing though with that is I think we have to make sure we don't forget the community aspect, because at the end of the day, we're able to do this because of the taxpayers of Fair Oaks. We are able to do this because of them. So we have to remember to make sure that we aren't trying to think, we are thinking big, of course, but that we are still doing things for Fair Oaks by Fair Oaks. Like I wrote down, I just like the way it sounded, but you know, authentically Fair Oaks. I love that. I think that's a great campaign when all of this stuff is done. But you know, that we're still doing things that are authentically Fair Oaks for Fair Oaks. I love the idea, Director Tamani, of outdoor yoga. I wrote that down. I think that would be, I would love to do that. I think lots of using the space year round, as people said, because we do have a region and climate where we can do so many things much more year round. And I think I'd love to have that mindset, you know, that the parks reimagined with the idea of year-round events. And I think we can reimagine that for our community. We definitely should have a strategy on parking. I agree with Director Carhart on that, on who we can use for that. Stakeholders, advisory committee is great. And really, I'd love to see more around holistic and wellness for our community, because I do think that hits all ages, to be quite honest. And I majorly agree with Director Tamani about things for those in their 20s. I would even say really 30s and 40s. I think that is not hit well enough. I think that's something that we could always have an opportunity to do better. And, you know, I think of all the development that we're seeing in Fair Oaks. We're seeing lots of new projects happening, lots of new housing developments. I've gotten to be part of a lot of that with the CPAC. And we're seeing all of these young families, 30s and 40-year-olds, you know, with young families coming. And I would love to see more for those parents as well, for those younger adults. And I think we have a lot of opportunities. So I want to make sure we're, you know, paying attention to that. And one thing with the organ, I agree, since we're keeping it and it's staying, that we absolutely need to figure what the fizz to do with that. I wrote down, which I think would be fun, I'd even go to that, like Metallica with a Metallica organ concert. I think that'd be so cool. You know, let's think of really cool things, like really get that organ just shredded. Like, let's think of some really cool things that that we could get people, get attendance to. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Great
I agree
addition.
as well with what Raymond has said and with what Delinda and Ralph as well. You know, I mean, if I can simplify it down, for me, it's generational stuff that we can do across the board. And it's a lot of diversification. Right now, we don't have any of that at all. So bringing in groups that are not, well, I believe in authentic Fair Oaks, but I also think it's important to bring in some players from outside the area that'll expose us to some new ideas.
Great point.
Can I throw in a couple other things? Nightlife and weekend. I think we don't do enough at night. And with the brew pub, you can go there sometimes and realize when things are lit up and it's exciting, you want to stay in the village in the evening. And for working people, weekends and night events and activities would be really cool.
Right.
The other thing I was thinking, a couple things popped in my mind. The old thing about if you build it, they will come. Well, we got to do our homework to make them come. But we had talked about building a community center. And I think all along we were talking about a building, a rentable big hall or something like that, like you normally think of. But when I look at what we're doing with the core of the village, this whole thing, inside, outside, lawns, pavilions, dining area, this is a community center. The whole thing is a community center. And what's cool is I was a little reluctant to spend so much on the village, but if the village is what makes Fair Oaks special. It has a core, it has a heart, it provides, it pulls the whole community together. And so what we spend here, the more we make this a venue of diverse activities, I think the stronger it is for the whole community.
Well, and thank you for saying that, Director Carhart, because I think if I could sort of, the big themes that I have sort of, raked together from these ideas are that, if this board is looking at the calendar of the year, 20 years from now, success would look like a lot of activity that is year round. And it would be a diversity of activity. So it wouldn't just be musical theater all summer or play, the fair that you've been getting, but it would be a range of music, festivals, family events, teen events. You've described it pretty, I've heard visual art, places for classes and learning, places for both formal and informal taking in of arts and culture, from festivals that happen that are draws to things that you might just happen into, to things that you might say every week I go to my drawing class there. That's a broad, multidisciplinary cultural heartbeat of the village. I've also heard that you would look at the how well the businesses around the village are doing as a measure of success. This kind of idea that this is a catalyst for economic development. I've heard from this group tonight, and of course we've heard about the organ, and I've seen it. I think the challenge of getting Metallica played on it is finding the right player, somebody who knows how to play that kind of instrument and wants to do that kind of music. That's a tangent, but those are really great things. And I think the other thing that I'm hearing in how you are projecting forward is that I think you are also saying that only some of this happens now. That we have, obviously there is some activity. There's the Chicken Festival and the Fiesta Days and the theater productions that go on, but it's not actually. If I had to put a gauge on what kind of the enthusiasm in your voices, it's maybe you're 20% there today, and you want to be 120% there in 10 or 20 years, if I'd encapsulate it. So that sort of takes me to, I'd love some thoughts on the second question on the screen here of, if we think about this future that's diverse activity, year round, a rich activity, what do you think are the obstacles, or the kind of the key obstacles in the way now, besides getting the renovation done? Let's just assume that you've got the money, the renovation's happening, that's going to happen.
Well, let me throw out a very mundane one, and it's
Okay.
something that's troubled the village for a long time, is parking. You know, if you go up to Jackson, or you go to Old Sacramento, or you go to Sutter Street, there's plenty of parking. You can have lots of events going on at the same time, multiple events. I had heard a rumor that maybe there's some property down Temescal at Maine that might be for sale. We need, you know, we've got over by the post office in that area some parking that sometimes we use for the chicken festival. But if you can't find a way to accommodate people's transportation needs, then that's a really limiting factor. So I don't know what we do. People have suggested maybe the county could build a parking structure. That's probably not likely, but we've got to grapple with parking and transportation.
Okay, noted. Other obstacles?
I think we have to think about it, and I was going to bring it up in the last one, but I think it works now. Potentially just looking in the future, looking forward, is just COVID, is distanced, you know, being able to have large scale events, being able to have bigger things where we can, you know, have lots of people in our park, but with everything going on, you know, that's something we have to be thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact there's a lot of outdoor space here right now would just give you a huge advantage for programming. You could be one of the only concert venues that could have been open this past summer, or maybe even next summer. There's a lot of performing arts centers are talking about just deferring at this point till next fall, till the 21-22 season. Our friends at the Harris Center, by the way, are unsure what their comeback looks like, or if there will be one, which is, you know, a little heartbreaking. I did the feasibility study for that project back in 2003, and was talking with the director there the other night about your project. And you know, if I think if there was more certainty in their future, they would love to help you program some music in your space. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, other ideas about obstacles?
Well, I mean, this is kind of an intangible, but I mean, you know, in spite of the fact that we've been talking about this since 2006, and, you know, the Measure J was passed a couple of years ago, and we have $27 million. We need to continue to work with the community to assure them that we are, as part of this change process, we're going to keep their interests intact. And there's still a whole bunch of stuff, you know, going through the internet about where we are, I won't use the word destroying the community, but we're changing it in a way that makes people uncomfortable. Now, it's an issue that everybody deals with when they go through this kind of a process. And I'm not sure how you address that, but I mean, it's maybe just a positive message out, reaching out to these people that are concerned that their interests may not be met. I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm sure that, Bill, you've been through this, and maybe you've got some ideas.
Well, yes, they're not tangible ideas yet, but change is hard. Jonathan actually taught me a term a couple of weeks ago. We talked, you know, the term placemaking gets thrown around a lot. Jonathan taught me a term called placekeeping, which I think you guys have basically touched on a definition of that, which is we have to maintain our authenticity. What makes Fair Oaks not Folsom is more than just the roosters. It's a sense of community. It's the way the village is constructed. It's the people who have been there for years, you know, who do that. I don't know, Jonathan, you want to say more about placekeeping and how we might want to keep an eye on that in this project?
Yeah, the problem with the 90s and 2000s model of real estate development companies trying to go into blighted neighborhoods and revitalize them, coined this term actually with the National Endowment for the Arts called community placemaking, and that was kind of using the arts as an economic driver. And what ended up happening was a lot of neighborhoods that were historically minority neighborhoods that were blighted got gentrified. And even in Pittsburgh, when I worked there, one of our neighborhoods in East Liberty, the real estate development company did everything by the book. They had community engaged focus groups. They invited community folks to every meeting they could. And the execution went south, and it ended up being just a disaster that they're still dealing with now, because they asked people's opinions and thoughts, but then they didn't actually utilize any of them. So the optics are incredibly important in something like this when you're changing things, because you have people in your community who've lived there and invested in that community their whole life. And if you start saying, you know, we're going to do this, and, you know, foot traffic and driving traffic is going to skyrocket, then, well, you know, I like to go walk around the park on Saturday, but now I'm going to get run over by hooligans coming or whatever. It does require a lot of negotiating on all of your part to make sure the execution as well as the research is, they marry each other nicely.
Well, that's where I think it's really crucial that we have some type of advisory committee that includes neighbors, it includes chamber, it includes the business owners and the property owners, and make them an integral part of planning the events and activities. You know, that's why the events that we've had have been so successful in the first place, is because they were integrated with the desires of the community. So it's in how we administer the activities there. We can't be aloof from what the neighbors and the business community and Fair Oaks people want. So the representation on that committee is really important, and that it have some teeth to it, so that our district can't just override and create, you know, some bad feelings.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm glad we're talking about governance already. I do think it's important. Before we give you your meeting back, I have just a couple more questions if you'll hang on. One is, before we leave the obstacles discussion, nobody said money.
I said grants and money.
I heard that. My ears perked up.
Yeah. How do we tap into the arts programs, you know, local, federal, whatever. Yeah. And how do we attract every once in a while some you know, notable performances or activities, you know, notable people that come in, so that it starts to create this feeling that we are, you know, kind of special. I mean, we'll never be a Laguna Beach or, you know, Palm Springs or whatever, you know, we will never be that, but.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad, and I think you're already thinking, as Jonathan and I are starting to think too, what are the outside sources of support? The hard part for us at the moment is what level of support will be needed, and what will you be able to draw. But by the time we're done, we'll at least be able to define what level of support would be needed, kind of to do a base level of activity and a growth level of activity, or something like that, is probably where we'll land. And what's an enabling governance structure to help you take in those additional dollars. Your notion of a committee that helps guide this and all that stuff. Maybe there's I don't know, maybe there's one that guides programming and another that's about support and fundraising, or maybe it's all done under one roof. But those are scenarios we'll explore down the road.
Two other quick ideas I wanted to throw out. One is publicizing stuff. We do have changeable message signs, but we need bigger, better ones on the major streets to talk about the events coming up, because we can't really do banners all the time. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was dealing with the parking and the access. Maybe there's some way that we can coordinate with Uber and Lyft and some of the other things where we make it really easy for people to schedule to come here. and then they can drink and party and go home without having to worry about where to park their cars. So coordinating with them might be a good thing.
Good point.
I have one more thing too. I just wanted to add that one of our community members, Adria Walker, has made a couple comments in the chat. And so I'd like to raise those and enter them into the record. One of the things that she had mentioned involving, activities or programmings that she would like to see would be more small or medium events or gatherings. That way community members could engage regularly together. And then she also mentioned that in terms of obstacles, something that she uses as an obstacle is the lack of public transport, and then also walkability is a barrier too. And so I just want to make sure those.
Great.
Those
Yep.
well.
Yep. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure who that was. Thank you. Thank you for shining a light on this. I wasn't sure who that was, but I saw the comments.
And that's a good point, because we talk a lot about, the weekends and drawing people in on the weekends, but I would love to see, part of the space, probably Village Park, or not Village, Plaza Park, more likely, to be able to attract some really nice farmers markets that come through weekly, and maybe do an art and wine little small venue on, say, a Tuesday night, and then the farmers market on a Wednesday night, to sort of lure people into those slower nights, and then they filter into the businesses and the restaurants, and just sort of creates a buzz that's, not maybe a big Saturday event or a Sunday event, but actually keeps an ongoing flow of people that are coming through.
And with that, let's remember, we're getting this a couple great spaces that are going to have these great market lights, great space. So thinking of using that at night, because our weather's so great. I mean, like Darren's saying, doing stuff like that at night. And, I was thinking even like a salsa class or some dance classes outside under the lights, right? Do a sip of paint under the lights. I mean, there's so many cool things that I think we'll be able to do, and have smaller things that are going on throughout the week, just not on the weekends. And then just also to one thing back to what Director Carhart said, and with kind of the place keeping, in what we've been doing, we've definitely run into, of course, people that are concerned about what we're doing and concerned about not being in the know or feeling like we're not communicative. And that's one thing I really want to make sure with this, that we really can devise some sort of plan that really is getting out to our community and letting them know, we want to hear from you. You are part of this. We want to make sure and you're in the loop, because that's definitely something that has been something that's come up.
Agreed, 100%. I mean, what we did with Measure J when we had 4 or 5 different community gatherings, how and where we can do that given the COVID thing. But I mean, it's that kind of outreach that is more than go to a website and click, what's your list of priorities. You want face-to-face communication, mass-to-mass communication, as it were, if we can do that.
2 other little ticklers I thought about while you guys were talking. One, I could imagine, we used to have dance classes, and I could imagine a dance class that's done out on the platform in the new Plaza Park there outside the lobby. And also, I think with our kitchens and everything, we should look at maybe cooking classes or things like that where we those are just a couple crazy ideas.
Yep. No, I like them. Yep, we'll take them all. Okay, all. So our next steps are to get this survey in of prospective users of spaces. So I call this the hunting and gathering tasks of continuing to collect input like we collected from you tonight. We're trying to wrap that up. Get into some case studies to provide some illustrations, bring that back to the steering committee in a couple weeks. I think we're negotiating schedules right now to come back and have that process. In the second phase, Director Mounts, just so you know, we have this kind of end of phase 1 moment with the steering committee. We'll bring a summarized version of that back to the board, and then 2 more steering committee moments in phase 2. Sometimes that turns into 3, depending on how we play out the end game, as I call it, with communicating and socializing results. But we'll have
it would be nice when you say like the needs survey and interview process, which is of paramount importance, I think, in all of our opinions, how we're going to execute those, reaching out on a broader base to the community, whether it's via like a survey monkey where we actually put in a plan and we do multiple choice. Okay, what do you want to see midweek in the village? And, you know, list art and wine, you know, farmers market, dance classes, cooking classes, and sort of then we can sort of filter through that and see what is actually most important. But we really need to get a lot of feedback.
Well, good point. I think it's something that we'll have to talk about with Mike and Sabrina. At the moment, that kind of survey, we do that kind of work. It's not in our scope in this case.
Well, that's something we can do as a district as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, we're on contract. We've learned a lot in the last couple of months. We're certainly happy to advise. We don't have the scope right now to run that survey. But in fact, anyway, but we'll.
On a side note too, I think we have a lot of people in the community that are really into nature photography and things like that, and maybe a place to display some of the local nature. I mean, I walk down to Sailor Bar every morning, you see the bird watchers out there, you see these amazing photographs on the different Facebook pages that are around Fair Oaks. I think of, you know, maybe some stuff like that. And, you know, again, that's outside your scope of work, but I think that's something that we should look at as a district of, you know, reaching out and seeing, because we could provide a really good venue for, you know, putting that kind of stuff on display.
Well, absolutely. I would actually say that that's not totally outside of our scope in terms of a program. And a good comp for that actually is just down the road in Rancho Cordova at the MAC, Mills Arts and Cultural Center. Was a small little whistle stop train station. They've turned into a small community gallery basically. And your idea of photography, I think the exhibit they just put up now is local photographers.
Yeah,
just kind of interesting.
That was a great transportation enhancement project that funded. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Caltrans did that.
As far as with the survey, kind of what Director Mounts is talking about, and if it ends up being just within our scope, your scope, whatnot, but I just want us all to be thinking about this too, is if we are sending things out to in that survey when they fill it out, putting something in there, you know, who else, what other, you know, who else should see this, and putting a spot where they can then put in emails or phone numbers of other Fair Oaks people. Because again, it's like, well, this person said they didn't hear, that person said. So if we give it a spot where, okay, make sure your friends know about this, send this to them too, I think that would be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to build as big a database as possible for this.
Yeah, and get some advocates who are running inevitably you have some next door social media activity and other things for Fair Oaks, including your chamber and others that could help you kind of go viral with something like that. We've seen that and have helped those kinds of efforts in other communities to try to be successful in terms of getting a reach.
Sorry, Bill, one more.
Sure.
But I just want to make sure, because all we have for our record essentially is what we have in our recording, but there's 2 more comments in the chat, and one of them is just Monica Gill is asking if we were to do this survey, if the results would be shared with the community or seen by the public, or would the public need to attend these types of meetings to get an idea of the results. I can speak to past surveys that we have done as a district, or as the Park District has done, and the results have been made public. I know when we did the survey regarding Measure J, we shared the results, and they were very interesting. I thought it was a great survey. We shared those results at a board meeting. I do not recall if outside of the board meeting, I mean, we always have our minutes, things posted online on the website. I don't recall if we shared those results via the Facebook page or an Instagram link or something like that, but we can definitely take that under consideration, because like I said, we want to be sharing as much information as possible. And then also Gary Jules put a note in here too, that FOBAC did a survey like this several years ago, and that's very helpful information. FOBAC is one of our community partners, so maybe they would be willing to share the results of their survey with us, just to kind of give us an idea of what's out there, or I mean, we might be able to learn something from their survey, or learn from their survey how we would want to frame our questions or the type of questions we'd like to ask.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
I think transparency is key, and I would say that we would have to share. I mean, why would we want to hold that secret? So.
Yeah, and we're happy to help within the bounds of our time and scope as best we can, and we'll take it up with Mike and Sabrina. In the meantime, on that note, you see our final slide and our email addresses on the screen there. And so for you all and anyone watching, if you want to send us your thoughts and comments, we're really happy to take them. You just have to email them to us there. We'd love to hear from you if you've got comments or questions about what we're up to or what you'd like to see happen here. We're happy to take that input here over the next couple of weeks. So with that, thank you. I think Jonathan and I earlier today, we said, well, if they don't feel like talking, this will be maybe half an hour. If they feel like talking, it'll be 45 minutes. So I think we've eclipsed all of that. So thank you for your thoughts and inputs. I have 4 pages of scribbled notes with things that were said, and I'm glad the session was recorded. We'll go back and get that, but I really appreciate everybody's thoughts and energy. And of course, thank you for your service to your community and the district. We appreciate it. With that, I'll hand it back to Sabrina, Mike, or someone else. And so I'll stop sharing.
Help us build a nightlife.
Okay. Okay, that's what we're all about.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jonathan. We really appreciate you coming and chat and talking with us tonight and going through this process. So it's been very helpful.
So it's our pleasure. Thank you. We're having a great time getting to know Fair Oaks.
So glad we hired you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Happy to be with you.
Okay, so we are going to move on to our next agenda item, which is discussion and possible action regarding the disposal and sale of surplus property adjacent to the Jim Strain Park and adopting resolution number 1021-20-01. So I believe, Mike, do you have a staff report that you'd like to share with us?
I do, thank you. I'm going to share my screen as well. So I'm going to start with that first so everybody has a vision of what we're talking about. You should be seeing a picture of the wall with a red line in front of it. Is that correct?
Not yet.
Oh. No?
Nothing.
Get to my shared screen then.
As a consolation, we do see your lovely face.
Thank you. That's not worth it though. Where are we? I've got way too many things open. All right, let me try again. Sorry. There you are, right?
No, we just see the.
Click on one of those icons, maybe it'll work.
Oh, you're already there.
Mike, the photo's on a different screen.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to get there. Thank you.
Aha.
There we go. Okay, so this is the area we're talking about, and it's all the area on the other side of this red line. I'm going to open another picture. You can see it's a rather small area and it's definitely isolated from the park. And 2 more.
Will we be the one to fence that off, Mike?
Yes, that would be part of it, which we would have to do. We would be doing that anyway. And that's a great view of, you know, how this thing tapers down into almost a triangle here. Real small piece of property that is going to cause us all kinds of grief in terms of managing and maintaining. And one more picture. Now this fence right along the side here, that's the adjacent property owner, and that goes the full length of the property that we're talking about out toward that red line that I showed earlier. They're interested in taking the property up to the wall, and that would extend their backyard. We wouldn't have to manage or maintain the property in itself. Initially, in our design, we would have to build a cross fence anyway because we can't see around that corner, and it becomes an area for undesirable activity.
Attractive nuisance.
Yeah, attractive nuisance, very much so. And so we knew we had to fence that. So the fence is still part of our plan. This surplus request is to allow me to go to the neighbor and say, hey, neighbor, you really want the property. They've already indicated they would like it. And you're allowing me to negotiate some kind of price with them for that. We're legally allowed to do that because it's under 5,000 square feet. It does not have comparables. Obviously, it's really hard to find a comparable for that small piece of triangle against a sound wall. And so more than likely, we'd be working with the neighbor to help us not have any expenditures in turning that property back over to them. You saw those trees in there. Those trees, if we were to keep the property, we'd have to remove. We would not be responsible for removing those trees if we deed that property over to the neighbor. Each one of those trees is about $800 to remove. So we're looking at about $2,300 to remove those trees out of there. So, and then again, we're not managing or maintaining, trying to manage or maintain that little triangle piece of property. So anyway, that's what we're up against. I'm asking the board.
You know, Mike, when we got rid of the property over at Phoenix in the enclave there, we gave away that property, and I think we had the people we gave it to not have to pay anything, but just pay the costs of the engineering costs, and I think that was it.
Yeah.
But so they covered our cost in order to get the free land.
Yeah, I'm working on the cost of the survey right now, and then to do the lot line adjustments with the county, what those fees will be. In the board report here, I do say that there's a possibility that we could be into this for up to about $5,000, depending on what happens here. So I would try and negotiate it down to as little as possible, and still come out ahead with the property owner and us. So
yeah. You can check the records on the enclave. I think we set a precedent there, which was a good one.
So Mike, you're looking for basically authority to move ahead with the negotiation?
Yeah, you actually have to pass that, approve the resolution that's stated in the staff report, and then actually go through that whole process of reading it, because it does give specific directions to me under the legal requirements for getting this property handed over to the neighbor.
Will it then come back to us to approve whatever, or is it under potentially limit, so it may not come back to us to approve?
Yeah, that's why I asked for a financial limit there. I believe that no matter what, we can get to that place right there. And if it's over that, I'd have to come back to the board.
Does your motion require reading the entire resolution?
No, just the recommendation part
in the staff report. Well, I'd like to make that motion so we can move on with what's obviously a good idea. I make a motion to approve resolution number 102120-01 for disposal of surplus land at Strang Park, and authorize and direct the district administrator to A, negotiate, approve, and sign a real property purchase and sale contract and deed and other documents and certificates as may be necessary or appropriate to effectuate the disposal and sale of the surplus area. B, to prepare, file, and process a lot line adjustment with the County of Sacramento to move the surplus area to the adjacent landowner's parcel and reduce the size of the district parcel. And C, take such other actions as necessary or appropriate to implement the disposal and sale of the surplus area.
I'll second.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the resolution? Okay, all in favor of the motion to adopt the resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so resolution approved. We are going to move to our next item, which is discussion and possible action regarding the revised lease of the cell tower at Miller Park. So again, Mike, I believe you have a stuff.
Yes, thank you. This is a little different because the committee on earlier this month, on September 28th, the Finance and Budget Committee made a recommendation from information I presented to them to enter into a renegotiation terms for the cell tower lease at Miller Park. As I was preparing the board report, I found out some additional information, and I have to actually give additional information here at the board so you have the appropriate information to make this decision, which the committee did not have on September 28th. So first of all, a little bit of background. The current lease agreement for that cell tower at Miller Park was executed on April 18th, 2007 with Verizon. Sometime right after that, the lease was transferred or sold to American Tower. That was allowed under the current lease agreement, but all the lease terms and conditions remained with the transfer of that lease. So the current terms of that lease that we were renegotiating the initial one was a 5-year term, which expired on April 18, 2007. 5 additional 5-year renewals were automatically available to happen unless 3 months notice was given by either party of their intent to cancel. All those extensions meant that the lease would expire April 18th, 2037. Rent paid to the district is $1,325, and it has a 3% yearly escalation. That was the initial rent, $1,325. Current rent is $1,889. All cost of the equipment removal is the responsibility of American Tower if the lease is terminated or at the end of the current lease. On October 25th, I received a letter from American Tower through a lease consultant company, MD7, who had been retained by American Tower to propose new terms for the lease. These new terms were a one-time signing bonus of $7,000, $1,100 per month, which is now a rent reduction of $789 per month, 3% annual escalation, and now 6 terms of 5 years each with an expiration of 2023 and a 5-year rent guarantee. The reasons for that were—
Mike, why would 6 terms of 5 years each end in 2023?
Because
it's only 3 years away.
Sorry, that's bad math on my part. 30 years from today.
So it'd be 2050.
Yeah, that's on all of them. So yeah, 2050. So the reasons given for that negotiation were that there's a lot of industry mergers right now, AT&T and Sprint being one of the major ones. So there's some consideration that fewer towers will be needed for these consolidations. Number 2 is that there's no expansion or slower expansion of new cell service customers. A lot of us already have cell phones and other devices. So there's almost a market saturation, if you will. Cellular companies are looking for lower rents from different towers. So these towers have different tenants on them. And if the rent on the tower is too expensive, these other tenants will go to a cheaper tower to try and get their rent lower. So high-priced towers cause those tenants to have to pay more. And the rent needs to be competitive for our tower to remain viable or profitable for American Tower. As I mentioned, after the September 28th meeting, the committee said, okay, here's the thing. Let's go with a one-time signing bonus of $5,500, $1,460 or $1,460 per month rent, 3% annual, still 6 terms of 5 years each, and then the 5-year rent guarantee, or continue with the current lease until it expires. I presented that option to MD7. They accepted it pending board approval. I find out some additional information. The additional information I find out is that the current 5-year renewal, as I mentioned, is the third of 5-year renewals and will expire April 2022. That's our next expiration date for our current lease. If American Tower provides the district with a 3-month notice, they could cancel that lease on April 18th, 2022. So just about 2 years or so. American Tower then would be required to move all the equipment from the site at their expense. During my research, it was discovered that less than 1% of the cell towers in the country have been removed due to oversaturation or too high of lease payments. If this tower, our tower, is removed, it would cost American Tower an estimated $250,000 to build a new site, and that is not taken into consideration the cost of removing the equipment on our site or the likelihood of finding a site that meets all the cell company needs. Currently, there are more towers being constructed than removed. So MD7 works on commission for the cell tower companies, of course, and they make their money on reducing their rents for the cell tower companies. I got a hold of some reps or some folks that negotiate contracts. We had one of those for our first contract, and they have said the same thing to me: do not negotiate your terms, leave them as is, and let them take the next step.
You know, on top of the costs associated with removing it and relocating it, they're in a unique grid there that there aren't many sites available for it. It's all residential area, it's hilly. They've got one of the best sites available. So I think it reduces our risk they'd pull out.
I have a few questions. So normally what is our protocol? Are we, when it comes to negotiations, because my understanding was a subcommittee can recommend a negotiation, but then it would then come to the board to approve that recommendation to then negotiate or then make an offer. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. This
Okay.
one, yeah.
So then what happened? Because from reading in this, it sounds like they were sent an offer before the board decided that we were good with that offer to be sent.
No, the committee recommended, and again, this would be pending board approval. You can always go back and say, no, these terms are not acceptable. And there's nothing signed. It's just that this is the term that I'll be presenting to the board.
Okay, because the way it was worded, though, it seemed like it was given to this group and said, okay, the board, or we're willing to make this, we're willing to go with this. That's not what happened.
They were sent the terms that the committee had recommended, but they were told that the board still has to approve those conditions, those terms.
And tonight we want to give you the authority to turn down that offer.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that, because that kind of worried me the way it was worded. It made me nervous about that.
A committee can't commit the district to something. It has to be the full board.
Okay. So I got to be on that committee. And then the other question I had was, I mean, it seems to me, it seemed obvious that they were strong-arming us, but why didn't we go to that person or that organization we used first to just kind of ask that at the beginning versus kind of at the end of this process?
Yeah, and it does seem obvious. You're absolutely right. It does seem obvious. And I take full responsibility for negotiating, or not negotiating, but working these through without, knowing exactly what the best approach would be. And yeah, you're right. I got a little strong-armed on this one.
It's thoroughly forgivable as long as you catch your error before we make a decision.
That's why we have checks and balances.
Do we need further discussion on this, or could we make a motion and then discuss it within the motion?
We can do that.
Belinda?
That's fine. There's another comment in the chat box that I would like to raise, and then maybe we could do the motion. But Teresa Irwin has raised the point that she believes that the rent for this tower is under market, and that we should check the CLIF code of regulations that California published for cell phone towers or cell towers on their property. And she said it's more competitive than the California code of regulations published by Caltrans. So That's helpful, and thank
Yeah.
you, Ms. Irwin, for that information.
I think the issue would be, though, that we have a standing contract we've already executed, so we wouldn't be able to change that for a better deal under our current obligation, but we don't have to exchange it for a worse deal.
Sure, but I think in this area, the more information we have, the better.
Exactly.
Knowing, what should we be looking at in terms
Yeah.
of what are the standards that are set out there too. So
Now, don't we have two leases there? We have two separate cell towers, Mike?
Yeah, there's two different ones. This is just one of those leases. Yeah.
Okay.
And when I get that letter again, I'm not even going to talk to you guys about it.
Well, I motion that we continue with the current lease until it expires.
there a second?
If that's consistent with the recommendation, I would second that.
Yes.
Mike can turn down the offer, in other words.
Mhm. Are there any other comments or items to discuss by members? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, any opposed? Okay, thank you. And thank you for giving us that new information, Mike. All right, so our next item is discussion and possible action regarding a change order to contract with Salter Acoustic for the acoustic design for the amphitheater.
Yeah, thank you. This is mine again. This is actually a change order with WMB. WMB would administer this contract if you approve it with Salter to do the acoustic design services for the amphitheater and the community rooms in the amphitheater. So those new facilities that we'll be having. The scope is in the board report. I don't need to really go through it, I believe. The one thing that you do need to know that this does increase the cost of WMB's contract by $10,100. The budget for this project, which we're going to talk about later, has increased. This is absorbed in that increase. All right, so it's not what I'm going to present to you today on your budgets plus 10,000 more. It's actually going to be another change order coming up. So it'd even be more than 10,000, but both of those are absorbed within the current cost estimations for this project.
And just to clarify, if they come up with some recommendations that affect the construction, there may be some additional costs to do the acoustics correctly.
There very well could be. You're absolutely correct. So
Is there, it could be my naivete, but is there a reason that we are signing this contract with WMB versus doing it directly with the acoustical company?
yeah, there's no savings to us to sign it independently, and this keeps them in that scope, and we don't become a middleman.
Okay, that was my question. Just wanted to make sure we weren't spending more because of it. So I think, though, that this is very important, and I know Director Carhart and I talked about this in our subcommittee on this. And again, we are building something really wonderful, and we want to make sure acoustically that it sounds wonderful, so that it isn't something that we have to then do later. We have this beautiful space that, well, it doesn't actually sound good, and it doesn't really work. So I think this is definitely a well-worthy additional expenditure.
Absolutely.
So I'll make the motion to authorize the district administrator to sign the change order for the acoustic design services with WMB Architects, increasing the contract amount by $10,100.
Second the motion.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. This is another change order. This one is discussion and possible action regarding the change order to contract with WMB for a design change to amphitheater restroom / storage room.
Okay, thank you. This is mine again, and I need to give a little background too on change orders, and I'm going off a board directive. You have not voted on the directive I'm going off of, and I just want to confirm my directive. My directive is to bring any change order above $10,000 back to this board for approval. Anything below that, as long as we're not breaking the budget, just that I have that authority to initiate those. So as long as that is still going forward, that's why you're seeing these two come onto into your agenda. So this one is for WMB Architects. They will be doing the work, and it is to turn the existing bathrooms that we have in the Arts and Crafts building that are the exterior existing bathrooms into storage for the amphitheater or for the theater. And what we want to do is create a usable space inside the amphitheater when we close the door, and they need to store their stuff somewhere. And this is the storage place for their stuff. So our facility is usable when the theater is not in operation. And so this gives us a place where we can keep they can keep those items. Taking out a couple of bathrooms, moving some wall, putting a door in, moving a fence, that kind of stuff is all going to be part of this project, but it has to be done through the architectural design firm. So the bathrooms, the outside bathrooms, in case you didn't know, they are up on the hill. They are currently not accessible ADA. To bring them up to ADA standards would be well beyond this renovation cost. And even to get up to them from the playground, would be next to impossible for an ADA accessibility. We have new bathrooms going in down below. I think I told Chairperson Tamani that we were putting in two bathrooms. We're actually putting in 4. So there'll be 4 stalls down below. But the ones up above really don't serve a purpose. There's bathrooms inside the Arts and Crafts building that anybody taking classes or programs inside there can utilize, and those are accessible. So that's what we have.
Now, Mike, today in our field review, we talked about simplifying the work on the building so it wouldn't be so expensive. I think you said together with the design work, it would be about an $80,000 renovation, which is frightful for making a storage room. So if we were to...
That's just a ballpark estimate on my part.
Yeah, so if we were to simplify what he does, would that reduce this change order down? We were talking about, simplifying it quite a bit.
Yeah, this is a not to exceed amount, so I'm sure it would.
Okay. It says that it would authorize you to sign a change order increasing the amount, but it would be, you would sign a change order that's negotiated with Tim appropriately for the design work involved.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, since we're taking out the storage for theater props and theater things, we're taking out a couple of those buildings there. This is essential storage. The restrooms are definitely surplus now and inadequate. So it seems to me good idea to convert those to storage in the cheapest possible way. So we have to do the design work if we're going to do that.
What's the size of this space?
That's a good question. I don't have it's not huge.
Each of those restrooms are probably there's 2 restrooms and there's a service, like a 6-foot wide chase in the middle, but the restrooms themselves are about 8 by 15, roughly 8 by 12 or 8 by 15.
Like 200 square feet, maybe 250.
Yeah.
So maybe about 600 square feet.
600?
Yeah, total maybe 8.
Larger than I thought. Well, let's just make sure that we come up with a financial number for charging for storage.
Well, the other thing is,
on that same note, Raymond James is kind of raising. I'm on the fence about this because, well, a couple things. I feel like restrooms are like parking spots. We don't have enough of them. And I realize those restrooms are not ADA compliant. However, we would have ADA restrooms available in the park with the ones on the bottom of the park, those 4 down there, which is good. It's good to know. Thank you for sharing that it's 4, because I did think it was only 2. And I know we're adding restrooms in Plaza Park as well on the outside of the theater, but I just don't know if it's a good use of space for storage. I don't know if our role should be to store the theater festival or who is renting that space. There are things, I mean, I don't know. It seems to me like removing well, on the women's side, I can speak and say there are 2 stalls in that wet restroom. And I believe on the men's, it's maybe 1 stall and a urinal. And so, yes, I would like to keep the restrooms.
It would sure save a bunch of money.
100 and something thousand. John, what were you going to say?
Well, $80,000 for 600 square feet of storage space is like the old library for $1 million, and I can't remember what the per square footage cost was. Yeah. So if anybody, we've all built stuff around here, and if that has to go through the full county process with permitting and all that stuff, all the soft costs, that is a waste of friggin' money. I would support Delinda, and I'd say, you know what, clean the restrooms.
Yeah, or abandon them in place. It can always be a project later.
Right.
Yeah, I'm persuaded by Delinda's argument myself. But Mike, how much money has already gone into pre-design work? Do we need a change order to do that, or?
No, okay. No. That's why I want to bring these things to you prior to us doing the work, obviously.
So basically, if we vote no, we could save about $200,000. Is that correct?
At least $100,000.
Mike?
You know, I'm estimating, I'm just ballparking those figures, you know, so I can't give you a solid number. And I know that architects are probably going to slap me for even giving you a number. But, you know, just knowing projects and costs and everything like that, that's my ballpark estimation. We talk about moving fences and making sure we've got all the accessibilities to them and stuff like that. That's roughly my idea. So how much will we save? You know, I don't know.
You're saying 80,000. What I'm reading is 209.
That's what I'm reading too. That's what I'm wanting to understand.
Where's this at?
In the document, it says change
document.
Fees, and it says original fee 180, 330, previous scope, etc. New fee $209,290.
That's the architectural fee overall for everything.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's not the.
Where is this 80,000 number?
Your total is 1962, right? Yes, 1962. Yeah, there it is. So that's
the 80 I mentioned was just if we do all the transformation work, the physical work of constructing the new storage room and taking out all the toilets and walls and the new roof and so on.
You see here if you're looking at the change order, that second box where it says change in architectural engineering contract fees, your original fee is $180,000. We've done one change order for $9,300. As I mentioned, $10,000 is a limit that I can sign. That gave you $189,670. This fee, $19,620, would bring the total up to $209,000. You're still at $189,670 without this fee.
But the $19,000 is just the cost of design. It's not the actual cost to do the transformation of construction. That's where Ralph, I think, is estimating that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the soft cost is my estimation.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to let the architect beat me down for saying that.
I mean, my concern is when we get to the next item, the freeboard between what we have already committed in terms of, or potentially committed for Measure J, and the balance of money that we have left that's a change order someplace else.
Yeah. Well, I recommend we don't take action on this.
So would the motion be that we table the idea of changing the restrooms into storage for now and just leave them as is?
I don't think we even have to have a recommendation on this. I don't think.
It's not going to authorize me to sign the change order.
Okay.
So we don't
whatever
need a motion then.
No, you're going to deny.
Okay. Well, and that's what we'll do. We'll move on to our next item then. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. So our next item is it's just a receive and file, but this is the Measure J bond projects, an estimated budget update. So again,
just so the board knows, I apologize. I have another call at 8 o'clock, so I will leave the meeting a little bit before 8.
All right.
I apologize.
We're running a little long today.
I believe you're seeing the budget on your screen.
Yes.
Okay. Get these closed. So this is your estimated budget, and I'm just going to go through the whole thing here, what we have. And I want to be clear on these estimated budget things, because you're seeing this moving target constantly, and we're seeing it too as well as we go forward with the projects. If you look at column E, this was the budgets as of 9/10/2020 that we had shared with the board and that you were aware of. You'll see the second line, Veterans Memorial, was 5.9 million. Currently, it's estimated at $7.9 million. Again, I want to clarify, this is an estimation. These things go up and down pending bidding, pending unfound conditions, all kinds of different things. As we get closer with construction documents, we get a more refined price on these items. But these are I guess the best thing is the ballpark estimates, or best estimates that we can make with the information that we currently have. And that's to get done certain the things that we're doing or that we've approved, that you've approved at this point in time. The increase in Veterans Memorial Amphitheater, right now, there's a variety of different things, but some of the major ones are the hazmat removal. That's hazardous material removal that we're seeing. That figure can move depending on what we find. We did a survey in there, a hazmat survey, but other things can pop up as we go forward. For an example, underground things, which is always a scary thing. We aren't digging too much here, but we will be doing some digging. This now includes 30% for soft costs. Before, it didn't have that in it because we didn't have those figures. The soft costs include design fees, construction management costs, legal fees, permits, and surveys. Those are land surveys for the project. Some of those have already been spent for this project. Bringing the bathrooms up to code and ADA standards. Those are the back of the house bathrooms for the public. Those initially were not in our early scope, but to get the permits that we need to have for construction, we need to bring those bathrooms up to code, and they currently aren't. And so there's an estimated cost of $285,000 to bring those bathrooms up to code. So we can actually have a facility that's up to code. And other things around that include quite a bit of an ADA, which also includes the slope area around the seating and things like that, that came into this project as it's got more refined and more mature, if you will, on it. So that's the Veterans Memorial Amphitheater. Number 2 is a new addition to it. It's the furnishing and equipment for the theater. This is, again, an estimation. This is sound equipment in the back of house furnishings. We had not had that figure in there before, and we are now starting that estimation. That's, again, a moving target, and it'll change as we go forward. You will see those changes as they come forward to you.
Mike, can I interrupt at this point on 2 things? One, are we counting on any of those soft costs for the amphitheater, tapping the money that the theater festival has already raised towards that?
No, we haven't. And my recommendation will be, when we get to that place, will be to look at the soft cost, or not, excuse me, not the soft cost, but the furnishings and equipment for the theater, and utilize that as part of the negotiation with them to financially participate in this program.
It seems to me their continued use of that would be appropriate for continued use, and it was raised under the premise that it would go into the amphitheater. Second question is on the 285 for the ADA restrooms. The amphitheater has access to the new restrooms within the building there.
Correct.
The lobby restroom and the 2, perhaps not the 2 if they're used as dressing rooms. Are those, would those suffice as ADA if we left the others alone?
Yeah, no, the reason they wouldn't is because that bathroom is inaccessible unless you go outside of the theater and enter into the lobby door during show performances.
Oh, so you can't get through there. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So line item 4, the clubhouse. This is this is the tough one here, at least for me. We early estimated this at 1.2 million. We had not included the soft cost. There are a variety of different things in that project that's raising the fees. A lot of it has to do with structural. The floor, for an example, we need to redo the floor to match all of the new work that we're doing. The back stairways, Director Carhart was in our meeting today when we discussed the back stairwell and how much work we have to do in there to make those stairs survive the next 25 years. We've got bathrooms, again, in there that need to be brought up to ADA standards. The current bathrooms we have are not up to standards, so we'll have to basically renovate those by removing and reconfiguring them to make them ADA compatible. We've got some additional, we turned the fireside room into storage for the stage and for the overall facility because we did not have enough storage in there. We've found some additional hazardous material in the ceiling and also in the tiling on the floor in the back stairwell. And then we're also including AV equipment, audio-visual equipment for presentations, and then sound mitigation or sound dampening, if you will, throughout the facility. If you've been in there, you realize that the sound for any kind of groups is not adequate. So that's some of the examples of some of the expenditures in there.
Mike, I had a couple questions. I apologize, I wasn't able to be in the meeting earlier today. For the stairwell in the back, I mean, do we have to have that stairwell? What if we didn't have a stairwell and we didn't?
Yeah, it is our connector to the downstairs. We did talk about that, and it was determined by staff and Katie and Sean, if you want to chime in on this as well. I think they're on the call or on the Zoom meeting, but it really is necessary for the service of that facility to have those interior stairs. It's not for the public. It definitely is a service-oriented facility or approach for the stairwell. And Katie and Sean, are you in there to chime?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is primarily used by staff. However, there have been some double-level rentals in the past which have utilized both upstairs and downstairs, and without that, they would have to exit either the front, back, or side of the building and walk around the exterior of it to get to the top level. It's used internally for some events that the district puts on, again, to take the prep area up to the event area, etc. It's not necessarily 100% necessary in the sense that there are other entrances and exits, but it does eliminate some of the functionality of the connectivity of the two levels. As the architects have noted, it's not a fire exit in any way, so it won't affect our code, you know, and our building permits and that sort of thing, but it does have benefit in itself.
Mike, are we talking about the stairs out of the back of the kitchen to the pavement out back, or are we talking about the stairs by the bathrooms that go down to the lower level?
Stairs by the bathroom that go to the lower level.
Oh, okay. Just to clarify.
So with that, you know, what it just makes me think of is that A, how many times are we really utilizing both spaces where we really need it? And B, with all of this new change that we're having with our theaters / community center that we're building, is that still really going to be something that we're going to see as a need, you know, or is it something where we think that use-wise that we're not going to see as much of a use like that? I'm not necessarily one way or another. It's just I think those are really important questions that we have to consider because it is, you know, a huge cost that we're adding on to that.
Yeah.
Those stairs have been used a lot through the years, but what has to be done to them to make them proper?
Well, we've got the base structure on them that needs to be redone, the landings of them. There's some resizing, as you heard him say today, that we have to do just so they meet code. And then we have also, more than likely, we have the hazardous material there on the tiles. And there was one other thing they mentioned today. I can't recall what it was, but
So what's the option of just leaving it exactly how it is?
well, there's a safety issue.
Is it?
Safety as in how?
They aren't going to, those stairs aren't going to be survivable and usable for very long.
So
Structurally, right?
Exactly.
So it'd be something where basically we'd have, if we didn't want to do anything, really, they just have to be sealed up, right? I mean, that'd probably.
Yeah, they'd be unusable, correct.
Yeah.
And Katie, did you have anything, Katie, on that? I'm sorry. I know she's.
I was just gonna chime in and say we probably on a good year prior to COVID get at least a dozen requests to rent the downstairs and the upstairs together for large scale events. I think we just lost the interest from those individuals. We used to have a multicultural event that would go in there 3 days in a row and rent the upstairs and the downstairs. But the issue again was the stairs and the safety, carrying things up and down to put on that style of event. So I think we lost interest from people who were originally interested in doing stuff like that in that facility. So at least a dozen prior to COVID.
So Katie,
do you have an isolated cost for just the stairs? Because you had mentioned that was part of, a bunch of other things that were going in that 285.
Yeah, that's just a small part of the 285. I don't have a dollar figure specifically to that, but it's a minor amount of that additional cost for this project.
If I could jump in just one more time, we're not going to be able to just seal up the stairwell because our access to essentially half of the plumbing of the entire building comes from the landing of that stairwell, where there's an access point underneath the kitchen in the upstairs auditorium, which leads to our hot water in, the grease traps that we need to clean for the kitchen as well. So, I mean, at the very least, we'd be able to seal up the upper stairwell, but we'd need at least something from the bottom floor to that first landing where it turns to be able to manage our maintenance needs.
Well, I tell you, as a user of that with Rotary and Historical Society and various events for the past 35 years, almost weekly, most of those 35 years, I don't think we can do anything but repair it. I mean, I would be very opposed to abandoning those stairs. I've seen them used too much. And we're probably, we're spending a fortune on the clubhouse. It doesn't seem a logical thing for value engineering it out of existence.
Yeah. And then I was surprised. So the AV costs, because I know we've talked about how important AV is in this whole project. So I was surprised that AV hasn't been included in our costs.
It has, but we had no indication of how much that was going to be. And COVID even changed how we internally were looking at some of the AV requirements. Things have changed, and virtual meetings and live meetings are now a thing of the future right now. And so we need to accommodate that in those AV needs.
And that's part of the 30% soft costs?
No, 30% soft cost is the design for that, not the equipment itself.
Oh, okay.
So that's going to be another cost that we'll see.
No, it is now part of the 7.4 or the $3 million in the clubhouse renovation.
When you say soft costs, you're talking about all the design and engineering costs. Okay.
And any permits, anything like that would be associated with that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the big question on this is Phoenix and the ball fields and the parking versus La Vista. Are we going to be able to resolve that so we can save any of that 5.7 million?
I don't know. I got an email again from the attorney today saying that the school district is getting the list together for surplusing property. Once they have that list together, which may include La Vista, they will be back in contact with us.
I wonder if we could just lease that property and reduce the amount of costs, lease those fields for.
Could be. That was our proposal to them. They were more interested in selling that property than they were in leasing it, whether it be a private developer or to a park district like us.
I see. I mean, it'd be nice if we could buy just the fields and not have to put more money into it.
We don't want the facilities. That's not something that I don't think I want.
There's probably millions of dollars in either demolishing or the only reason to buy it would be to buy it and peel off part of it and sell it to a developer.
Okay.
All right. So then if you go to line item 5, that's the Village Plaza Park. We met out there again today. That budget now is further along and it is holding steady at 7.4. When we go to bid, you're going to see potentially some changes in the budget, either up or down. We don't know yet what's going to happen with bidding. All right. And there's a couple of things with bidding that we have to be aware of. One is that there are some hungry contractors right now. I did find that out. They're getting more bids for projects than they've had in the last 5 months, but concrete and lumber costs have gone up. So we may not see any savings. We may see some savings. I don't want to go either route on this one. But the amount is pretty consistent. We actually use cost estimators when we get this far into it. And then we check those cost estimations against a database to make sure that they're accurate. For an example, what's the square footage cost per concrete? And so when they give us that cost estimation, we have an ability to check most of them, not all of them, but most of them, and to see if they're falling within industry standards for the last few years. So when we looked at Swallow Way, for an example, it came in almost exactly under those figures. So at those figures, not under, but at them. So it was when we saw the cost estimation for Swallow Way, we knew that we were in that ballpark. Now we're just still waiting for bids on Swallow Way. So the estimation's there. Now we wait for bids. The number 6, Director Carhart mentioned that Phoenix, it's 5.7. It's a holding amount right now. And again, I want to let you know that's the estimation. It's a holding figure. That's all it is right now. Swallow Way, 200,000 is an accurate or actual number. The overruns, if there are going to be any, are going to be picked up by other funds, including the impact fees and potentially Prop 68 money, but more likely impact fees. Pump track, that was an actual 30,000 and it's held at 30,000 as we finish that project. We have added some new services to that. For an example, the sprinkler system that you approved and the shade structure, I believe, and the gate. Those are additional costs, but it's outside the scope of this estimation and this project when we first did this project. The port in place, we budgeted 813,000, and this is a good example of what can happen. This was after bids. The budget came in at 461. We had the cost estimations. We put the budget down at 813. We put the contingencies in, and then we finished the project at 461,000. I can't say that's going to happen every time, but it is a good example of how fluctuating this stuff can be. We were 95% on the PIPs, 95% ready to go, and the bids came in lower, and that's a good thing. So the total in September of this year, you were at 21,273,000. Right now, you're at 25,191,000. You have an estimated balance of $1.7 million currently. Back in September, you had an estimated balance of 5.6 million. Again, these are all figures that are going to float around. So I just wanted to share these with you. I can answer any more questions, but that's where we're at. If these costs, a lot of these things, as you're talking about the stairwells, for an example, in the clubhouse, some of these things, when we see the bids, we may opt not to go with. You may opt not to go with something, whatever it may be, when we see the bids. So,
question, Mike, the 26.9, does that include the interest we're earning on our money in the meanwhile?
It does not.
I think that's a factor too. We've earned a sizable amount of interest. Do you recall how much?
I don't have that figure in front of me, but it is,
okay. It's
in the 6 figures. I know that.
The thing that I'm concerned about is that we have enough money left. Right now we have 1.7 million. that we have enough money left to deal with McMillan Center. That's our other big need. And what I do like about this is that we're going to have a continuing capital budget. We have increasing property values, so we'll be able to bring back a capital program that we haven't had for the last, decade. And it's so important that we do these big ticket items that we never would be able to consider with our annual capital program. We can do a lot of the nitpicky things later, the small projects, by accumulating our annual capital money and our other revenues. So I think we're on the right track on spending properly on the really big things, the village core, the ball fields and so on. And I think McMillan Center, we got to squeeze out enough to at least do something decent to either replace or enhance or expand that. That's my biggest concern.
And Director Carhart, we as staff, we have been discussing the McMillan Center projects, what it would take to add this back into a list without tearing it down. And so I will add that into projects not included list, if that's all right with the board. Just a consensus is all I need to do that. We don't have any cost estimations or recommendations at this point, but as staff, we have been in dialogue about it.
Yeah, I've always felt in the past when we didn't have a lot of money, I felt we could do a wing out into the lawn area there, just to the east of the building, make kind of an L-shaped wing and add one big hall there, allowing the old part of the building to serve as smaller rooms or maybe a relocated bathroom. I think we can do some things with that to make it suitable now that we've determined we really don't need a giant community center rentable hall. And plus, when you look at that would take out an enormous amount of mature trees in order to do what Tim had come up with before. But I do want to mention the parking lot there really needs some attention, and hopefully we can find some money to resurface that parking lot someday.
Yeah. So if that's all right, if that's a board consensus, I will add that to projects not included list, at least at this point in time.
I don't think it can hurt. I mean, we'll obviously review things as they come through.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm fine with that too.
Is that a substitute for community center? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm put a / McMillan Hall right there with community.
Yeah,
center. Yeah.
Because that was the idea. The community center would replace McMillan, but and you can still pursue ideas for working with the library. Maybe there's a way it can be attached to the library or something.
Right. Correct.
Well, it's not unusual to have these kind of costs, and we're getting a heck of a lot for our money. We're restoring the heart of the community, which is what makes Fair Oaks special and unique and cohesive. So, any concern I had before, I think we're still on the right track.
We are.
Yeah. And thank you, Mike, for kind of going through this in detail. I appreciate that. I think it's really important to share this information with everyone that attends our meetings as well. For those that are attending, please share this information with your friends and family as well, because we are working very hard to make everything as transparent as possible, like Director Mounts had mentioned earlier tonight. Are there any other questions, or shall we move on? Okay, so let's move on to our last agenda item. Again, another receive and file. This one is an update on the district's other post-employment benefits liability as of the end of June 2019, the OPED liability. And Jennifer, do you have a staff report? Oh, I think you need to turn your volume up.
You hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So yes, this is a receive and file. It is the annual actuarial evaluation of our OPEB liability, and what OPEB means is our other post-employment benefits, which is, in our case for the district, it is health benefits that we offer to our retirees after retirement or after their service with the district. It's not our pension. That's a separate valuation that we have every year. So this one is for OPEB. We do it every 2 years, and on off years, we get a remeasurement. So last year you got the full report. This year is the remeasurement of last year's report. And I'll just quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I want to just show you if I can share my screen. So this is from the report. And if we look at last year's total OPEB liability, it started at 164 by the end of the year, was at 2.164, ended at 2.187, not much of a difference. This, for last year's OPEB report, it went up significantly from 2.1 to 2.5. That had to do with demographic changes, assumptions, the discount rate, a lot of different things. And then for this current year, it went from 2.5 to 2.6, which is about $100,000 more. And in the report, it talks about all the reasons why that happens. It actually went up, but it went up less than they had estimated that it should for this year. And that was based on some demographic changes, as well as the fact that the cost of the premiums that they were estimating were not as high as they had estimated. So what you'll see on our annual financial audit will be this number right here for our net OPEB liability. And that basically means that it's not something that the district is legally obligated or financially obligated to pay now, but it has to be represented under the current standards that we work under for government accounting. So I don't think there's anything else unless you guys have questions or comments.
Now, Jennifer, that 2.6 million projection, do they figure that every employee of the district is going to retire from us? Because we only pay that if they retire here.
That's correct. Yes.
So how are they doing that?
They have a very complicated calculation that they do that's based on how many years people have been here, whether or not they're anticipated to retire from here, life expectancy. It's very complicated. But that number is based on a closed set of staff that was here between between 2018 and 2019. So it's already old data, but it's how they measure. They measure 1 year behind.
Yeah, historically, we've had a very low retirement rate from us due to past policies and the fact that we have a lot of young staff and not a lot of upward mobility. So people, when they get to a certain level, often jump for another job or something. In other words, not a lot of people retire from here. What do we have now? About 3 or 4 retirees?
I think we have 6 currently.
6 now? That's twice what it used to be. Yeah.
Marianne. But yeah, I mean, we don't have a large number of retirees, and that's why we've been able to do the pay as you go, where we just pay the premiums out of our regular general fund budget every year. However, we did implement an irrevocable trust through CalPERS, so we are putting some money aside. One of the things that this report does that's very helpful is it shows what they determine to be the actuarial contribution that we should be making every year in order to pre-fund the liability.
205,000.
Right. Yes.
That's what we should. Last year we did 40,000, and this year we're doing nothing.
Right. They also include in that anything that we currently pay. So the 40 or so thousand that we paid for benefits is included in that 205,000. So it's not quite as bad as it sounds, but they'll recalculate that for next year. So you'll see it again. And then because we didn't allocate anything in this year's budget due to our crazy budget, we'll
be deeper in the hole.
Yeah.
So we're in much better shape than most agencies, I guess.
We are, due to our very small number of retirees, yes.
This is something that I was very proud of the district for being able to set aside that $40,000 in fiscal year 19-20. I would like us to do it again, but I realize given the current circumstances, I really think our focus should be making sure we can meet all of our current obligations. And like you said, Jennifer, I mean, we are paying the current retirees. So it's not that we are behind in any way in that regard. And I just think this is a good, I'm always happy to see this report because it keeps it fresh in our mind of a liability that is out there, but not currently pending. And so thank you for your report. Are there
So
any
what
other-
we're paying out now is roughly $10,000 out of pocket for our retirement, our retirees' healthcare.
Or a little over 40,000 in total for the year.
No, I mean that we're actually paying in premiums.
For the full year?
For our retirees, how much are we paying out of our operating budget for the retirees' healthcare, the 6 retirees?
It's about 43,000 for this
Oh,
year.
that much, okay. Okay.
And that's reflected in our monthly financial report too.
Yes.
We see,
But Mario breaks it out for you so you can see it on the full month of payroll expenses.
And that covers healthcare. Does it still cover dental for them?
No, we don't pay dental.
We just pay their healthcare.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Okay, let's move on to our board and staff reports. So first, beginning with items from the board of directors. Director Irwin, do you have any items this month?
Nothing for me.
Okay, thank you. Director Mounts?
Nothing for me.
All right, thank you. Director Carhart?
I will be out Saturday, the 24th, distributing candy along with a couple other Rotarians under a tent at Phoenix Park, which will be fun. I'm in about my 3rd month of being a community gardener in Fair Oaks and really enjoying that. That's all I got.
That's great. Director O'Farrell stepped out. And so for myself, I have 2 quick questions. One, this I guess would be directed probably towards either Katie or Mike. When I was looking at the activity guide online, I saw that the district is now accepting vouchers from San Juan Unified for some of the childcare programs. And I just wanted to ask about that. How does that work? And if, I'm assuming we're getting a benefit, but if you could just explain a little bit about it.
Yeah,
Sorry, Mike.
I'll let Katie go ahead and do that.
So we were contacted by San Juan Unified School District about that. And it's similar to what we already do with Visions for homeschooled children. So it's exactly the same actually. And so they just wanted to be able to provide a resource to the students to be able to be physically active since they are not currently physically in school. So that was their way. So they've established a budget, and basically any student that goes to San Juan Unified School District can apply for a voucher for one of our programs and have it paid for until they reach their budgetary amount. And I think they started with 2,000, and I'm sure they'll reevaluate. But it's good for us, the benefit, because we know at least that amount of money is going to come in the next few months. So people are actively using it, and we are going to set up a list on our website to tell people how they can do that to make it easy for them. And then we've talked with San Juan, and we're going to put a little blurb at the bottom of some of our social media saying if you're a San Juan Unified student, there's vouchers available. So it's a really good program.
That sounds great. Thank you. Thank you for partnering with them. And it sounds like your outreach, those sound like great plans. So I have one more question, and I think this would probably be for Jennifer, but when Sac County since Sac County is the one who collects the bond payment, or not the bond payments, but the property taxes that include the bond measure money that each, Fair Oaks resident is paying. And then Sac County is the one that pays the bond. So do we get, and I can't recall, are we getting a regular kind of an accounting from Sac County? In addition, I know Ralph had talked earlier about the interest, but what is that process?
I believe it should be available to us through our normal process that Mario uses to download information from the county.
Okay.
I don't know if Mario is on. Maybe he can chime in.
I see him on there.
maybe. If not, I can get back to you tomorrow. I can let you know tomorrow what that process is. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. Those are all the items that I have. So how about items from staff? Katie, do you have anything?
I have just a few quick items. As Ralph mentioned, we'll be having the Wickedly Ghoul Trick or Treat Trail this Saturday from 2 to 6 at Phoenix. It is full. It required pre-registration to set your time slots in order for us to follow the COVID-19 social distancing rules that we needed to follow through our application process with the county. So there are no walk-ups for that event. Staff will be out, most of the full-time staff will be out there working it. And we have approximately 250 attendees. So kudos to Sabrina and the team for putting that event together. And the county's actually using our event proposal as one of their examples for everybody else to follow, because Sabrina did such a good job putting that together and really looking at proper social distancing to keep everybody safe. So I just want to give Sabrina kudos for that. I will be working on some policy development with Mike. One example of that will be a travel policy and also a program cancellation policy related to air quality, heat, rain, things of that nature. We already have a COVID-19 SOP, standard operating procedure, for if that occurs and there's any kind of outbreak that could occur. And so that's set in stone and people have been trained on that. And we're just kind of following in suit with that. So we have a standard practice. And other than that, we've got a lot of outdoor programs running that Nick and Chelsea are working on. From an independent contractor standpoint, we're running Tiny Tots, and that's been pretty full and running great. We've got classes through Skyhawks outside and Vision soccer classes. We're still operating virtual classes. We have some conditioning, not sports, but conditioning rentals on our fields. And our tennis classes is full and running great. So just letting you guys know that we're still moving right along with classes outside.
Hey, Katie, do you want to mention about the naming of the community center as well?
Naming of the community center.
I should have talked to you more about. I know we talked about it, but I should have brought it up later.
Oh yes, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
yes, so we will be putting together a plan for another potential campaign to see about naming the community center aspect of the add-on to the amphitheater, since the amphitheater is already the amphitheater, but this building, when it operates, won't necessarily be operating as a full amphitheater. We'll be running classes out of that. And so the suggestion is to officially name that building, whether it's, after someone or a community center, a rec center, or anything like that. So we'll be putting together a proposed plan for that and then doing some outreach eventually with that to find out a good name for that building. Is that what you meant, Mike? I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And just to add on to what Katie's saying, we will want to bring this to your January board meeting because it is part of the bid package, obviously, to get the signage correct for the building. So you can opt not to name it as well. You can make that determination. But if you are going to name it, we would like a little direction, or actually Katie can probably come up with a rough plan for your December meeting saying, here's how we would propose to run a naming program, and you can add to it, subtract from it, or whatever, and then get it done by the January board meeting, hopefully.
I would just say, given that it's really important to maintain the amphitheater as the Veterans Memorial Amphitheater, I would hate to weaken it too much. I would like to see a generic name on that. Personal opinion. Put a sign on it that shows what it is, community rooms or whatever, but not name it necessarily after someone. I think it detracts from the importance of the Veterans Memorial Amphitheater as the other half of it.
Well, thank you, Ralph. I will note that in the proposed plan too, for sure.
You come up with a bunch of good generic names for us.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Sean, do you have any items?
Yes, I have two for you. And moderator, if I could have visual capabilities here for a little bit. On my second item, I will be sharing my screen. As usual, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. And while I'm getting a visual capability, I will just go on with the first one. We recently had a visit from CAPRI, which is the California Association for Parks and Recreation Indemnity. That's the organization that, to sum it up very quickly, is our insurance company. It's not exactly the relationship we have, but it covers it. We had our visit where they cover risk assessment and what our efforts are on a year-to-year basis as far as how we're managing our ADA accommodations, risk reduction, loss prevention, that sort of thing. And through that meeting, we did receive a 92 out of 92 for our score. So max grade, we did very well. We will be receiving, as far as I'm aware, through their grading scale, the CAPRI Ted Winslow Safety Award, which we have received in the past, but we will be receiving it again for this past year. So we have done well.
I'm sorry. To get visuals, I need to do something real quick, so you'll have to.
Okay, I will pause.
That's great though, Sean. Congratulations.
It's not just me, it's the entire staff here. We're all working together. Everybody's got their part. Let me start my video. And my next item is concerning Gum Ranch. And I'm gonna share my screen here really quick, and I hope it pops up how I want it to. And yes, I apologize for Microsoft Paint. It's what I had, so I'm working with it. This is Gum Ranch. I'm going to just kind of draw on it a little bit to show you that our overall park plan is kind of this area right here. Boop. Not counting this one, sorry. It's going to be very technical. I apologize for how rudimentary this looks. Recently, we acquired 2 pieces of property. As you'll be aware, this is the creek coming through the center, and we acquired the area north of it. And this drainage water quality basin here in the west side of it. What that is essentially when the north branch of Arcade Creek, which is the blue line, overflows, water flows into it. Also, when rainwater hits the area, water flows into it. And it essentially just prevents flooding and allows water to dissipate into the ground and remain in that area before it dissipates back out into the creek. That creek that water quality basin has some requirements to it because it is essentially a joint ownership between the Sacramento County Department of Water Resources and Fair Oaks Recreation and Park District. What we'd like to do is not just leave it as an empty basin for 12 months out of the year. We'd like to be able to potentially program on it, potentially have some recreational activity on it. Essentially, what our agreement states is that we can build on it, but nothing that prevents the function of the water quality basin. So we could put signage, we could put benches, trash cans, we could have people using the space. We could potentially have people parking there. We couldn't put a restroom in there. What we're looking for at this point, because the construction on Gum Ranch Park has begun, is to hopefully tie any construction we may need to do to that location in the water quality basin in with the overall construction, so they pretty closely match construction endpoints. What we need from you, Board of Directors, is some direction on possible uses. What would you like to see it used for? What do you think might be best there? We tossed a lot of ideas around, and the only thing I would say to temper your ideas is that it can't be anything that is permanent or disrupts the dissipation of the water. So an orchard wouldn't work, a building wouldn't work, paving it would not work. So that's essentially what we're looking for, is just a little bit of direction on what you would like to see there, and what we can go to the Department of Water Resources and say, hey, is this okay? Let's get this into a signed agreement that you're not going to complain, and we can maintain this, and you can still get in there for maintenance, because they're still going to need to be able to get in there and maintain the location as well.
So Sean, I wanted to point out one thing. that small detention pond drains the runoff from the subdivision. The big pond to the north of the creek is the one that takes the overflow from the creek when there's a big storm. But this one was put in there to take all the impervious surfaces off of the gum ranch and run it through here, I think for water quality purposes before it runs into the creek. That's my understanding. I don't know. I had heard you say that creek water flows into there. That's the big pond.
It's going to be difficult to stop it from my understanding, since they're the outflows of both of the detention basins are at a similar elevation from having water flow into it when the creek overflows. So I think it will be primarily for the, perhaps primarily for the subdivision there, but when that creek overflows, it's likely going to go into both of them, even if this one is just a minor amount compared to the larger basin.
Good point. Good point. Back in the 80s, there was enough water that came through there that was flooding over Kenneth, flooded a lot of this area, and actually had 3 feet of water through Hoffman Estates, so was problematic. And as you say, I had looked at this area for some potential uses. I thought, well, maybe dog park, maybe community garden. We were thinking that dog park would probably have a lot of bad materials that would deteriorate the water quality into the creek. But my current thinking is it would make a wonderful community garden. So just throw that in.
And in my conversations with the Department of Water Resources, that is always a possibility. It's actually an idea that a lot of people who have these detention basins comes up with. That being said, we likely wouldn't be able to have raised planter beds that are there year round. They would have to be removed before the rains of the year. And we'd also have to have restrictions on what type of chemicals, fertilizer in particular, we put into the planters, because it might become runoff into the creek there.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, I recall on the design for Gum Ranch that there was like I can't recall, it was like a running path or a walking path that kind of went around the park. Would that be possible to extend it through that space? It's hard to tell kind of how big that space is, but maybe make the path longer so it's, and not pave it, but, you know, some sort of, I don't know, decomposed granite, something that separates it from the dirt.
Yeah, and I apologize because my black lines showing the extent of the park were a little off. I'm going to do a white line here, and we do have a walk path that comes up through Kenneth and kind of follows the creek line all the way up. And then there's going to be a bridge as part of the plans that goes over the outflow of that detention basin, and then comes up through our previously existing, I'm pointing at the screen because I'm a very smart man, previously existing property here up to Manana. So we will have one that goes around the north side of that detention basin and along the east side here as well. It's this section right here that I'm going to put a white X on, that's going to be a house. So we can't really utilize that space, and we probably couldn't pave along the side of it because the detention basin is completely fenced in right now with an access gate right off Tuckaroo here. So passing through that would be problematic, though not impossible.
Is there parking for people outside of that immediate community to come and use that space?
Only street parking, but there is the potential for using the detention basin for additional parking when it's not rainy.
So street parking on Kenneth?
And also on Tuckaroo here.
Okay.
We actually have a couple of call outs on Tuckaroo for ADA stalls.
Okay.
Yeah. Sean, I want to point out to the rest of the board too, that white line that ends at Manana, we have 100-foot wide strip that goes for another maybe 500 feet, actually accesses through to the Long Acres, but it has a short, it hits the back of a property on Hoffman Estates. And my thought is at some point later, the park district might want to negotiate a pedestrian pass-through so that the entire Hoffman Estates could have a walking path or a bike path or whatever all the way through to Kenneth. Be a nice path amenity, but it would require acquiring a pedestrian pass-through.
Yeah, there's a pretty good piece of land right there to the north of Manana, right?
Yeah, it's the creek goes through there, and we currently own 100 feet wide, all the way from Manana over to the backside of Hoffman Estates.
Yeah, okay, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Sean, how soon do you need to make a decision about this? I very much enjoy this conversation. I just kind of wonder if maybe we should table it to our next board meeting and have John's thoughts too on it. Also in the chat comment, Garrett McDermott had mentioned bike jumps. So it sounds, I would love to have more time to almost like sit on it and kind of think about ideas. But if this is something, do you need
this is definitely not something that needs an answer tonight. It's more to get your minds cranking on what this could be used for. And Mike could give you a better time frame on when a hard deadline would be on these. But to my mind, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, at least by next board meeting might be some time that we could talk about it and perhaps get community input if that's what you all desire as well.
I think it'd be a good idea for us to maybe go walk the space too and actually get a good visual on the ground.
Anytime you'd like, I am available.
I wanted, Sean, I wanted to point out one other thing where your red line ends up there behind the Manana homes. We have, point out to the rest of the board, I know you know this, but we have a sort of a landlocked piece of property back there. You have to cross some deep channels, would require a bridge to make it accessible to the public. And right now it's kind of a dead area, good spot for homeless or whatever. We've talked just really conceptually about whether it would be, a good idea to sell that as surplus land to the property owners that are adjacent. And maybe that could be provide some funding for, building a pass-through or something like that. So, or at some future time, maybe we can find some access to it. The other thing was off of Kenneth there, we were talking about, there's a strip north of the creek before you get to the wall of the detention pond, the big giant detention pond. That's quite a bit of real estate back there for something. It's suitable for a road or something. When Garrett's talking about some kind of bike stuff, that's kind of the place where a path or something like that could go in too.
And without digressing too much, because at this point, I think, and pardon me for saying this, I think the focus should be on what we do with the detention basin at this point, only because we're trying to match it up with the construction of the park.
I see.
Well.
I see.
And we can move towards the other facets of the property, especially with our new assessment that we have in the area, and we're a lot more open time frame wise for deciding what we do with everything else.
Good point.
Well, thank you for raising it, Sean. And I agree. I think we should think about it and maybe continue our discussion next month.
Yeah, and this may be something that we want to run through committee. And Sean did bring up community input. This is a neighborhood park. They are paying an additional fee for this park. How much and when do we engage them in this process to see what we want to use with this? It is a unique challenge. It's a lot of fun to just kind of brainstorm ideas and then see which ones will stick with it. So, but I would like to see this time frame, as Sean had mentioned. If we have this nailed down by February or March at the very latest, that should allow us to match up construction time. So, and nailed down by being, here's what we're looking at. We're looking at, I don't know, dog park or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay. Was there anything else, Sean?
That is it for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. And Mike?
Yeah, a couple of quick things I have. I did talk earlier about the La Vista project. I did get an email today from the attorney as mentioning the school district's attorney is looking into starting the process for surplusing this property. Still no time frame on it though. And then the mural. I would like to talk a little bit about the mural. You have tasked me with coming up with some kind of memorializing that mural. That's part of your motion to have it removed, was also to memorialize it. I do have a photographer currently that I feel very good about. He has incredible recommendations, works for National Geographic, does some amazing photography, high level stuff. And I'm about ready to sign the agreement for him to start taking pictures of the mural. No matter what happens with this and how we memorialize it, a picture will be part of the equation. So we don't know yet what this picture will be in terms of display or what, but we have to have the picture. And so it has to be of high quality. And so that's our first step. And I'll be signing that agreement with the photographer here this week or next. And we'll start the picture taking of the mural. And then we'll be talking with Hugh a little bit about a couple of things. One is the enhancement of those pictures. He does have to approve the enhancement of them if there is any. Number two is the intellectual property of that picture, the display and things like that. We need to make certain that we're following the law in regards to whatever kind of display we use with those pictures. And so I'll be working simultaneously with that, and however that plays out. So just enough.
How much is that cost? How much is this phenomenal National Geographic photographer costing?
It's a great price, and I was surprised. The contract will call for $50 an hour. We have not set the not to exceed amount yet, but I will talk to him a little bit more, and we'll get that not to exceed amount in there. I'm guessing
that was $50 an hour.
$50 an hour.
Okay.
That's a good price.
Great price.
Yeah.
Best thing we for all night.
Yeah, for that level of professional, we're getting a great price.
Was the artist made aware of this photographer and okay with him, or do we not need to?
We don't necessarily have to have the approval for the photographer. We do have to have the approval for any enhancements or display of that picture.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for hanging with us. I know tonight has been a really long meeting, so I appreciate your time and energy. Can I please have a motion to adjourn to our next regular meeting in November?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you again. Everyone have a great night. Stay safe.
Guys, thanks a lot.
Good night. Good
Cheers.
night.
Night.